Remain seated, please. Permanecer sentados, por favor.
To all who come to this happy place, welcome.
Our largest single-theme land expansion ever.
Now we want you to share with us our latest and greatest dream.
Matterhorn Matt presents Matterhorn Mondays.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 117 of Matterhorn Mondays, coming to you guys live from the Outpost. Today, as always, I'm Matterhorn Matt.
And I'm, as always, Alex the Historian.
And we have a special returning guest, you guys. Celebrity guest, actually. Jeremy just got off the Ellen show just a few minutes ago. That's why the stream was so late. We have Jeremy, you guys.
That's right. Sometimes Jeremy.
Sometimes Jeremy.
It's going to be...
Good to be back.
Yeah, it's good to be back, guys. It's been, we did the math before we went live. It's been almost a month since we've done a proper Matterhorn Mondays podcast. We did the one in Disneyland 2 weeks ago. There was no podcast last week, and then there was no podcast the week before the Disneyland episode. So it's been almost a month since we've done this, and it feels weird being back in my studio, you guys, with all these cameras and lights everywhere. It's gonna be, well... Anyways, we have a great episode planned for you guys. And as always, if you'd like to leave a voicemail to voice your opinion on any of the topics we have at hand, give the number 575-386-5814 a dial on your smartphone or your rotary phone. We're not ageist here on the Matterhorn Mondays podcast, you guys. Whatever phone you have, use it to call in.
And it's actually now, there's a new rule. It's actually mandatory to call in.
Yeah.
So everyone who's watching, actually, it's mandatory to call and leave a voicemail. If you don't, I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen, but it may involve not being able to access your emails ever again.
Exactly, you guys. We're not going to go into...
We will have access to your emails instead.
Yeah, not going into any specifics, but there will be consequences if you don't leave voicemails, you guys. Just kidding. But anyways, as you all know, links to everything will be in the description down below. And also, if you'd like to be wished a happy birthday live on the stream, you can head down to the link in the description, fill out the Google form, and we'll add you to our birthday calendar. And it looks like we have 3 birthdays. Last Tuesday, the 17th, was Gail P's birthday. Happy birthday to Gail. And Saturday, the 7th, or excuse me, the 21st. Where did I get the 7th from? Saturday, the 21st, was Charles Stanley's birthday. Happy birthday to you, Charlie boy. I guess Charlie's a nickname for Charles, I think. And this upcoming Thursday, the 26th, we have none other than server legend Nate's birthday. Matthew, happy birthday to the one and only Nate.
Legend.
Yeah. Legendary Nate.
Legendary.
I was hoping we didn't miss out on any of the birthdays the past few weeks, but those were the only 3 for the past few weeks. So happy birthday to you guys. Also, you guys, this is a special Christmas, or I guess I should say holiday episode of Matterhorn Mondays, you guys. Christmas is in just a few days. Well, today's Sunday, so it's 3 days. But on
I believe
Monday,
it's the first night of Hanukkah.
Oh, so. Happy Hanukkah to everybody as well. My computer just like glitched right there, right as Jeremy said that. And
I heard
everything.
Yeah. Yes, I was like,
gosh.
I was like, act like everything's normal and his voice will return.
That was scary, you guys. I was worried it was going to crash.
I almost thought Thanos just snapped him into oblivion.
Oh, well, speaking of, I have new sound effects, guys, besides the main clapping ones.
Oh, God.
Wait, almost. That's Lego Baby Yoda death sound, you guys.
All right.
High quality. I also have clapping. Clapping doesn't... Oh, there it went. Yeah. Anyways. Great stream planned, you guys.
Wow,
yeah.
Everyone left the stream.
Oh my God. Guys, please come back. I'll stop being silly, please. Yeah, well, anyways, we do have a great episode planned for you guys. A lot of great topics, but before we get into any of our topics today, we missed it last episode, you guys. There was no Matt Snaps. I forgot to bring in my my Snapple into Disneyland. Actually, I don't think I was physically able to bring it in because my shoulder was aching so hard from the dumb satchel that I bought. Any additional weight would have immediately snapped me in half. So we have regular peach tea Snapple, you guys. So let's go ahead and give this puppy a pop open here. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Oh no, it didn't snap. I didn't twist it fast enough. I twisted it slowly, and you could like hear the air slowly. Anyways, sorry about that, guys.
That was like how last time when I accidentally opened my Snapple before we even went on the air.
I know, tragic. I'm sorry, you guys. But anyways, I'm gonna be using my new mug here that I got from Oga's Cantina. You guys, this is from what drink was this from, Alex? The Nip Nip? The Yub Nub was what it was called. Yub Nub, you guys. Collectible mug.
He doesn't remember.
Yeah, that's true. It's a real cute mug. I'd highly recommend getting this drink, you guys. It tasted good. And the mug is real cute, too. It's got the Battle of Endor on it. You can see the Ewoks, and you can see some ships and some trees. But anyways, let's go ahead and pour this in. Oh, that's some ASMR. Right? Do you guys like ASMR here on the Matterhorn Mondays podcast, don't you guys? But
no.
Yes, Matt, we really do.
I'm not gonna.
Okay, anyways.
Oh, God.
Anyways, before we embarrass ourselves further, let's get into this week's news from the peak.
We now present to you news from the peak.
You guys, we have some great news from the peak pieces today, and I'm excited to say for our first bit of news from the peak, everyone can rejoice, you guys. The original Space Mountain is returning in January with the removal of the Hyperspace Mountain overlay.
Yay.
Everybody
John Hench can roll back over in his grave and rest peacefully now.
Everybody in the chat, can I get a big clapping emoji in chat for the return of the original Disneyland Space Mountain? Now, that's not to knock on Hyperspace Mountain. I went on it for the first time when I was in Disneyland a couple weeks ago, and it was fun. It was a different experience, to be sure, but I did miss the original Space Mountain. Alex, what are your thoughts on the original Space Mountain returning in January?
I'm really happy about it. I mean, Hyperspace Mountain is kind of cool as like a one-time overlay for like, 3 months tops or something, like a summertime thing. But, nothing beats the original Space Mountain. And honestly, since it's been gone for a whole year, I'm really excited to have it back.
Jeremy, what about you? Oh, God.
Everybody okay?
No. I mean, of course, this is good news. Personally, I've never understood why they've done any overlays in Space Mountain. I've enjoyed all the overlays. It has nothing to do with that. I've just never understood why they have decided for a while that Space Mountain should be an overlay mountain. It's like, there was a period where it was like Space Mountain was the original Space Mountain was like less frequent than like an overlay version of Space Mountain. So I'm happy it's going back to regular Space Mountain because it is perfect as is, I should say.
That is true. Not to knock on Hyperspace Mountain, like I said, but it'll be nice to have the original back. And hopefully this is the beginning of the removal of all the other Star Wars junk in Tomorrowland.
Doubt it.
Yeah, probably. It is worth noting, though, we touched on this a few weeks ago, I believe. Path of the Jedi, the show, is already removed and replaced by the High School Musical, the series, the show, I don't know what it's called, the show on Disney Plus, a preview of that is playing in the Magic Eye Theater now. So hopefully, whether or not that has a place in Tomorrowland is another discussion, but at least it's not Path of the Jedi. Next to be, hopefully, Star Wars launch bay. But for our second bit of news from the peak, you guys, the new parade. I bet everybody forgot about this parade until this announcement happened. Magic Happens is set to debut February 28th at Disneyland. Now, this is a quote from Disney. Quote, "Magic Happens celebrates awe-inspiring moments of magic that are at the heart of so many Disney stories. Mickey Mouse leads this new daytime spectacular down Main Street, USA, revealing a parade of stunning floats, beautiful costumes, and beloved Disney characters. Magic Happens will also feature an energetic music score and a new song co-composed by singer-songwriter Todrick Hall." So, again, like I just said, I forgot this parade was happening, so I'm not very up to date on it, but we'll scroll through some of the pieces of concept art here that they've released. I believe this Maui one is a new piece of concept art, but anything's better than the... What was the... I forget the name of the parade that they had before this one. Was it the...
It's the... It was the Mickey Soundsational.
Ah, yes, Soundsational. So hopefully...
Which I actually really love. Of all the parades I can personally remember watching, Mickey Soundsational is my favorite.
Interesting.
Wow.
Well, hopefully this parade is better than the Mickey Soundsational. I'm hoping that it's the best parade in the history of parades. Even better than the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade, which is a pretty good parade. So we'll see. And for our final bit here of news from the peak, this is sort of an interesting tidbit here. Cast members have been unable, or will be unable, to visit Hollywood Studios till the end of March of 2020. Cast members have since been blocked out of the park since before Rise of the Resistance opening and will remain that way till the end of March. Now, I'm not sure if this is necessarily anything new when like a big e-ticket attraction like this opens up, say in Disneyland. I think this same sort of thing happened when Galaxy's Edge opened in Disneyland as well. But Jeremy, what are your thoughts here on cast members unable to visit Hollywood Studios until the end of March?
I mean, if it's because of crowd issues, I know people are probably, I think, still getting to the park as early as 3 in the morning. So I can understand that in terms of crowds. I don't know if it's historically a normal thing. I'm sure Alex will know that, but yeah, I'm sure that'll, once it's March, we'll forget that piece of news.
Nate said in chat, how are they supposed to get to work if they're blocked out of the park?
That's funny.
Yeah, that's funny. Alex, what are your thoughts here on cast members being blocked out till March?
You know, that's a very normal thing. You know, every time that Disney has something that's really popular that they open in the park and they know that the park's going to be overcrowded with people, they'll block people out, you know. So the cast members. So I mean, it's just normal. Yeah.
Well, let's all give our thoughts to the cast members who will not be able to work at Hollywood Studios anymore since they're blocked out.
Oh, jeez.
Well, anyways, I don't work there, so I feel like it'd be like not anything worth noting to say if this sort of story came out like 3 or 4 years ago. Cast members being blocked out of Hollywood Studios, I feel like no one would really care. But now, since Star Wars Land is opened, everybody cares because Star Wars. But anyways, that does it for this week's news from the peak. And we do have a short little tidbit here for Alex in the parks. No video this week, but there have been some updates to the parks about Star Tours as well as the entrance of Tomorrowland. So Alex, why don't you take it away for Alex in the parks? Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I seriously thought you were going to play the song.
I forgot to play the Matt Snap song.
For the song.
I forgot about it. Guys, we got to do Matt Snaps again.
Play
I got to go to Walgreens real quick to get another Snapple, guys. I'll be right back. Anyways.
No one goes to Walgreens anymore. All right. So, what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So about the Tomorrowland entrance. So, I actually tried to find some images of the refurbishment work that was going on in front of Tomorrowland, and what you see in front of you is actually the only good image I could find of these 1967 decorative panels that are installed on the building that is currently Star Tours. As you can see in the picture, this was Adventure Through Inner Space. But these decorative panels are made of fiberglass, and they were installed in 1967 for the new Tomorrowland project. They're very much mid-century modern / Googie style, kind of interesting. And I believe that they were designed by John Hench himself. And so anyway, those have been at the entrance to, my head is blocking the whole panel thing. So anyway, they have been at the entrance to Tomorrowland since 1967, and all these years, many people never paid attention to it, and I don't blame you. They're kind of way off to the side, and you're actually on your way over to a ride, so you probably don't notice them. Anyway, I've been following for the past couple of weeks their progress as Disney was slowly removing each panel very carefully one by one. I was trying to figure out what they're doing. I mean, were they going to throw all the panels away and just put regular stucco concrete on the side, or what were they going to do? Or were they going to paint the wall? What was it? So for the longest time, I'm talking like 2 solid months, the panels were completely removed, and the only thing that was in front of that area was scaffolding and construction scrims. And the other day I was hanging out there with Chris, and I walked by and I was surprised to see they were putting the panels back in. Now, I didn't get a picture of it. I don't know why I didn't snap a picture of it. But anyway, the panels were originally like a metallic aluminum color, as you can see in the photograph. But in the 1990s, they were colored sort of like a off-white, almost beige color. And they stayed that way until like the early 2010s, when they were painted a slightly more light gray color. And now that they're coming back, they have a really interesting color. I tried to find something on the internet that kind of matched the color, but I could not. As a matter of fact, there was only one thing in the world I could think of that matched the color, and it was an old Autopia car, of all the Autopia colors that used to exist in Disneyland, the one color I was looking for, no one's posted a picture of it on Google. So, but anyway, I'll try to describe the color for you. Yeah, I'll try to describe the color for you. So basically, if you can imagine a dark metallic gray, but then imagine that they put, it's like a special kind of paint where when sunlight touches it, it has this rainbow color to it. So even though it's like,
I know what you're talking about. I know what Autopia car you're talking about too.
Yes. Yeah. And they got rid of that Autopia car color when it was re-sponsored by Honda. Now it's all Honda colors. But yeah, so these panels are now this dark metallic gray with this overtone of like rainbow glitteriness that when the sunlight hits it. And it's the same kind of idea as what the current Mark 7 monorails have. They have a solid color. Like you look at monorail orange, and from a certain point of view, it looks orange. When you get up closer, it's got this rainbow effect. And so anyway, so that's that. And I know that's not much of like a big news, but it's kind of interesting to think that these little decorative panels that have been there since '67 and were designed by John Hench, they're still going to be here for the foreseeable future, just with a different paint scheme. So I'm happy about that. I'm actually really glad to see that they're coming back. I know that's not that big of a deal. But, yeah. Matt, what was the other part of
the new Star Tours scene?
And you didn't want me to give spoilers, right?
No spoil. Well, I mean, if the scene has any like spoilers for the movie, I'm sure it won't. But
you know, I don't know, because I don't plan on watching the movie. So okay. I don't know whether what I saw is
shots fired, you guys. Kathleen Kennedy is quivering right now that Alex said that.
Well, I'm seeing the movie this week, so I don't want any spoilers at all.
Oh yeah, Jeremy. Well, what about the rest of the viewers?
You're right.
Jeremy can take his headphones off and I guess I'll have to
Then
do
we'll
the
never be able
same.
to-
But
Never be able to tell him to put his headphones back on.
oh my gosh, that's true. You can't hear us.
Okay,
Nate says
so
the new scenes don't spoil the movie, so I guess it's fine to talk about it then.
Oh, okay. All right then. Well, I'll take it. I'll take his word for it because I haven't seen the movie. Okay, so I rode Star Tours with Chris the other day. It was the first day that they introduced the new scenes from the new Star Wars movie into Star Tours. And as you guys know, Star Tours has 3 parts to it. The first part is the takeoff, and usually you either get a robot that's stopping you, or you get Kylo Ren, and sometimes they switch to Darth Vader.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, this time we got Kylo Ren, but the rest of the ride was entirely brand new. With all new dialogue, with Anthony Daniels as C-3PO. And so basically where we went from there was we went to Lightspeed after escaping Kylo Ren, and then we came out of Lightspeed passing the Endor moon. We knew because C-3PO said, oh, we just passed the Endor moon. I think he said, R2, we passed the Endor moon, just like Star Tours used to be. And so we passed that, and then we start coming in very quickly to this water planet, this giant water planet. And the ship kind of crashes into the water, and we're floating above these huge waves. And C-3PO and R2 are trying to get the engines to work again. And we kind of sputter a little bit into this large, it looked like a building floating on the water. It was full of holes and stuff, looked very run down. And then in there was some kind of character, but my memory's really fuzzy of it, so I'm not going to linger on that. And then we got
Bob Iger himself.
Bob Iger himself was in the building. Yeah. He's all, I hope you enjoy the ride. Anyway, so the ship takes off back into space, and then we got a hologram message from Lando Calrissian. So the actual actor, as you know,
wow. Yeah,
did this, and so he talked about how we have a rebel spy and we must keep them safe, and he's giving us coordinates to the destination or something like that. And it's
a resistance spy, Alex, not a rebel spy. Not to toot your horn.
You know what it is. Thing. You know what the First Order is the Empire, but just with a different name.
You know what it is was when Star Tours Adventures Continue came out in 2011, they all said Rebel Spy. When everything switched to the new trilogy with the First Order, then it became the what was the other?
The Resistance.
The Resistance.
So dumb. Anyway, so after we get the coordinates from Lando Calrissian, we take off back into Lightspeed, come out of Lightspeed into the atmosphere of this planet, and all these First Order ships and Resistance ships are there. I imagine this is a recreation of the climactic scene from the movie. And we're like dodging a bunch of ships and trying to prevent ourselves from getting killed. And from what I know, C-3PO then suddenly gets this boost of courage and decides he's going to start fighting the First Order as well. So he orders R2 to start shooting down the TIE fighters and other ships that we see. And next thing you know, we're following the other ships like the B-Wing and the X-Wings, and we're going up towards the underside of a Star Destroyer, just like in the original Star Tours, and we shoot the hangar bay of the Star Destroyer, which explodes, and then we kind of dive down a little bit, dodge a few more ships. We see the Millennium Falcon go by, and somebody thanks us. I want to say it was Lando thanks us. And then we escape and take off into light speed. And when we come out of light speed, we find ourselves, I'm trying to remember correctly. Let's see. Oh, yes. We come out of light speed in space, and we find ourselves going back into the Star Tours hangar bay. And we're kind of going in gracefully, and we strike one of the landing droids, and we hit the floor of the hangar bay, but then tilt over off the edge and hit the other floor below it. And then we see the actual pilot of our ship off in the distance, and he goes, "Hey, that's my ship," and he starts walking over, and anyway, and then C-3PO says something like thank you for fighting with us in the resistance or something, and then the ride ends, and he's still, even while we're unbuckling our seatbelts, he's still shouting through the scrim something at us, but I couldn't hear because everybody was talking. Oh, what a great ride and whatever. But C-3PO was saying something to us through the scrim, and I think he could have been arguing with the pilot of the ship. So I don't know, but it was really interesting. But the thing that really caught my attention was that, and I don't remember the exact words anymore. I only went on this experience once. I couldn't possibly remember every detail. But the overall message of these destinations we went to was kind of like one giant goodbye. And I realized it as soon as we did the, R2, we passed the indoor moon part. It was kind of like after that, there was a whole bunch of references to the original Star Tours. And then there was a whole bunch of references to the original trilogy of the movies and the new trilogy. And then when we went into the battle sequence with all the ships on this planet, and we're like firing back at them, the things that C-3PO says to the audience led us to believe that it's like, this is it. We either fight now, and try to survive, or we let the First Order take us and we'll never survive. He says if we C-3PO said if we don't make it out alive, I want you all to know that you've been the best passengers, or something like that. And yeah, and so it was kind of weird. Yeah, I'm trying to remember what else, but there was just the whole way the story went kind of seemed like this great big goodbye to Star Tours, not necessarily to the movies. And so I couldn't help but think something, and I'm sorry this is taking so long, but I couldn't help but leaving the ride with the feeling that, hey, this overlay that they're obviously they're only going to be showing these scenes for the next 6 months at least, just like they did last time. I can't help but feel like once the end of that 6 months is up and the hype of Rise of Skywalker is done, that I get this feeling that Star Tours is closing permanently. Because that's how this new scene kind of felt. Like it was a goodbye to Star Tours and not so much the movies. And so it was just really interesting. And Chris didn't pick up on that, but I think that's because he was also having a lot of fun just riding the ride. Me, I analyze story. I can't help it. When I watch a movie or sometimes I see the special effects and I go, that's really cool. But on the inside, my brain the entire time is, does that make sense to the story? And does that make sense to the story? And how does that work? And so it's like people often see that as because I'm overly critical of things, but it's because I'm not paying attention to the special effects. I'm paying attention to the story. But yes. So I'll end it right there. If you guys have a question, let me know.
Well, there is a quote, an interesting quote. Well, at least something I thought was interesting from Blog Mickey about the new update. They say, quote, Star Tours continues to provide what both attractions and Star Wars Galaxy's Edge don't, a connection to the films. There is no doubt that the attraction holds value for Star Wars fans who might be looking for a more traditional ride experience that relies on the films for inspiration, unquote. So I just figured that was an interesting, sort of like I don't know, it was like pent-up aggression almost in that sentence from Blog Mickey about Galaxy's Edge.
It's an interesting point, and it's kind of teeters on the edge of something that I'm going to at least know that I'm going to talk about later when we get to for later topics. But yeah.
Well, anyways, thank you, Mr. Alex, for providing that Alex in the parks. And yeah, we do have 3 main topics this week, you guys. It's going to be a fruitful episode, I'm sure. First topic, we're going to be giving our review of Galaxy's Edge, since it was my first time going a few weeks ago. Jeremy's first time going almost a month ago, I think. Second topic, we're going to be discussing the final couple episodes of the Imagineering Story. If you guys haven't seen the episodes yet, pause the podcast, go watch them. They're, they're good episodes. If you've already seen them, then be prepared for a discussion. And finally, we're going to be taking a deeper look into the brand new attraction, Rise of the Resistance. I'm excited to get into that as well. But for our first, I guess let's get to a voicemail here. Let's see. Ooh. This one was just sent in moments ago. Transcription not available, so I have no idea what... Oh, here it is. Okay, anyways.
Probably full of cuss words.
Let's go ahead.
I hope so.
Oh my gosh. This one has no name attached to it, so I'm not sure who this is from, but let's go ahead and give this...
I can guess.
Listen, it's not from Avery, if that's what you're wondering, but it's from someone.
Hello, and I have to completely agree with Alex in saying that this is probably the last overlay for Star Tours. I've been seeing the end of this ride for a while now, and with Galaxy's Edge being open the opposite end of the park, I do not see any reason for Star Tours to exist now. If this really is the end, it's going to be sad to say goodbye, but it was fun for all these years.
Guys, don't think about it that way. Think about it like this. Think about how much money Disney's going to make from... Voicemail. Yeah, well, think about how much money Disney's going to make from all the Goodbye Star Tours merchandise they're going to be selling you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Think about that instead of thinking about being sad about it going away. Anyways, yeah.
you just know Disney this goodbye to Star Tours, and then they're going to be like, oh, we decided not to close it after all. So here's the reopening merchandise.
Wouldn't that be something? The original Star Tours. Wouldn't that be something? Well, anyways, thank you to whoever that was for sending in your voicemail.
Love. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have a name attached to this, but I believe in the past we've already talked about our thoughts on Star Tours going away. I'd be all for it. If they can repurpose the simulators for another attraction, that'd be great. We'll see what the future holds, but getting to our first main topic of the show, let's talk about Galaxy's Edge, you guys, because Jeremy and I went for the first time recently. Yeah, Jeremy, what are your overall thoughts of being in a Galaxy's Edge? Well, for context, this is Disneyland's version of Galaxy's Edge, not Walt Disney World's version. So, Jeremy, what were your initial impressions when you first visited the most immersive land in Disney history?
I wish I had written a prepared statement, because I think I was more I could be more articulate with this a month ago, but I'll be going back in a week, so but I'll start with a comment that I immediately turned to my dad as we were walking into the transition from Critter Country to Galaxy's Edge. And I said, all of a sudden, I feel like I'm in Disney World. And I think it's because, you know, the rock work looks new. He said, yeah, you know, it feels very much like the transition into going to Pandora. So I think maybe it's the newness of it that makes it feel like it doesn't quite belong. But I think that's the overarching idea here. In a vacuum, as a standalone experience, I think it's wonderful to walk through and explore, just to sit back and look at, and it feels like a real town. It feels like an outpost. Very well done in that respect. There are a couple of fundamental things of theme park design that it doesn't adhere to, and I wonder if it's because it's trying to give off a sense of gritty realism. But that just goes to the point of I don't think it blends well with the rest of the park, because it tries very hard to remove itself from the rest of the park. And I don't think it even removes itself very successfully. You know, it's a great, I mean, it's a marvel. It's wonderful. I was underwhelmed with Smugglers Run. I was very excited to go on it, and when it opened, I really enjoyed the ride through videos that I was seeing. My experience of the attraction was waiting in the line, and my team was called like instantly, so I didn't really get a chance to be like, wow, I'm in the Millennium Falcon, this is so cool. And so then we were like, you know, my team was called right away, so we were rushed right in to the Millennium Falcon. Couldn't even process that I was in the cockpit. We sat down, put seatbelts on. I was a pilot. The ride started right away, and I swear I really don't remember anything else. It happens so fast, and you feel a level of responsibility. Fun, but like Disney Quest level fun. Enjoyable, but lacked, in my opinion, as a first ride through. I'll go on it again and maybe form a newer opinion. I think Star Tours, even since it's become a promotional tool for the new movies, does a better job at connecting emotionally with its audience than Smugglers Run. It's a great build. You round the corner and you see the Millennium Falcon there, and it is kind of like, okay, you can't help but have a smile on your face. It is pretty cool to see. And but once you enter the cockpit, everything goes so fast, you have no time to kind of sit back and let it really sink in where you are and what you're about to do. You're kind of thrust into a role and a responsibility and forced interactivity that I felt that I had to really focus on what I was supposed to be doing, and not allowed even to kind of sit back and go, whoa, I'm in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. And so I think, and given just the content of what's going on in the attraction, I don't know if it's very successful at the emotional aspect of it. I will get to Rise of the Resistance later, and I'm secretly hoping that there'll be some kind of soft openings when I'm in town, but I doubt it. But we'll get to that attraction later, but I do think it will add to the land experience as a whole. Will it change my opinion that it blends well with the rest of Disneyland? Maybe with time and getting used to it, but from a design opinion, there are no I hate using this word if people don't know what it is because it's such a funny word. There are no like weenies.
Yeah.
There are no you don't enter the land and go, I want to go there. That looks interesting. And I understand it's probably because it's designed to be realistic within the Star Wars universe, but you kind of just, and the way the Millennium Falcon is set up as a landmark, it doesn't feel like one. You kind of, well, actually it does. Actually, I take that back. It kind of does in the respect of like, you're wandering the streets of Venice. You go under an arch and all of a sudden you're in St. Mark's Square and you're like, oh my God, it's right here. But, so you kind of round a corner and you're like, there's the Millennium Falcon. Oh my God, it's like right in front of me and I just rounded a corner. That's cool. But I think in theme park design and the way the rest of the design principles of the rest of the park are, you see something, and they actually highlight this in the Imagineering stories. John Hench, this Imagineer was talking about what John Hench taught him, that Walt taught him about the four, I forget what it's called, but like basically like the 4 layers of design or whatever.
Yeah, I can't remember what the
about how
exact words are.
you have, well, it's basically like like film. You have the wide shot, and then you go into the close up. But the level of detail, I think it was, there isn't. It's very. I think it adheres to that last level. Everything is right in front of you and feels very real. But there isn't quite an opportunity to go to kind of like take it in as a whole and go, wow, what's that off in the distance? I choose to go there. I want to go there. And when you get there, the detail builds and builds, and then you're rewarded with an experience by that weenie, by that landmark and stuff like that. A great example is, the simplest example is entering Disneyland and seeing the castle at the end of Main Street and going, I want to go there. And then you're rewarded by going there. And there's a plethora of experiences you're rewarded with. That is lacking in Galaxy's Edge, is my point.
Okay, well, I'd also like to touch on Smugglers Run, because there was one of the first things, I thought the ride was okay. I didn't think it was necessarily the greatest attraction ever. One thing Alex, I remember saying in a previous episode, was that you're supposed to be in the cockpit of the Millennium Falcon, which is off to the right side of the ship. But and then when you're shooting, everything's centered on it. It's just kind of off-putting that way. But I think I was pilot 2 times or 3 times, and then I was gunner once. And I guess it's universally agreed that pilot is the best position to have.
Interesting.
Gunner
It's so interesting because I'm kind of like, as a pilot, I felt so much stress and I had to have such a heightened sense of focus that I didn't have the time to kind of like sit back and experience what was going on. And now I'm like, I want to be like a gunner, or like, so I can maybe have time to kind of sit back and go, oh, isn't this really cool what I'm doing and where I am and what I'm experiencing? I feel like it's an experience. It's a demonstration in the future of interactivity, but it doesn't. Then they spent so much time trying to do that, but they didn't really successfully hit the home run in terms of then like experience and story and environment and this and that and that and yeah.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
I like being engineer. I really like it. Okay, I should explain why. You know why?
No, I feel like that's what I'd want to be, because I want to like sit back and experience.
Exactly. Like I'm unfortunately I'm gonna grow into one of those old people that never gets into new stuff, because I'm so used to the times when there was no interaction with rides. It was mostly just you watching the ride unfold around you. And so when I'm forced to interact with a ride like on Smugglers Run, I don't really like it. I want to sit back and enjoy the experience. And so my favorite part of Smugglers Run is the engineer, because you have the least things to do, and I can just see what's happening instead of having to do too much.
Yeah, okay. Well, I understand where you guys are coming from. I'd like to, you know, I feel like that could apply. But I guess for me, when it comes to like video games and stuff, because that's really what the ride is. It's a big video game, really. When it comes for me to that kind of stuff, I'm really competitive. And I don't know. I really liked being able to like steer
I get a keyed in sense of focus. I love the idea that I'm driving, and I'm with you, Matt. Like that's really cool to me. I also love video games, and I love puzzles, and I love stuff like that. But I think, you know, they're not quite there yet at being able to fuse the two very different forms together. You know, it would be like, let's do a movie where then the audience has to choose what happens next. You know, it's like, it's ambitious, kind of cool, but you have to really. So it's a great first go at having interactivity in an attraction. But let me tell you something. I work at an escape room. You know what escape rooms are?
Yeah.
So I work in an escape room here in New York. Escape room company, and I have to say, forcing an audience to interact or play, not many people understand the principles of playing a game, and I think that a design flaw possibly with Smugglers Run is that not everyone wants or is like excited or even knows how to participate in an experience like that. And even from someone who does like to participate in experiences like that, I didn't have a necessarily like memorable experience with it. So I think that's interesting because I watch on a daily basis these, like, you know, we reach out to corporate groups who like, you want to do a team building event, do an escape room, you'll learn how to work together and solve puzzles. And if people don't want to be there and don't want to play basically just like a themed game and solve puzzles, they don't want to interact. They're like, oh, I want something to. It's not about being passive, because I think theme park attractions as a form of entertainment actually is the most inviting of the audience to sit up and be alert. In fact, I think that's what it psychologically causes you to do no matter what. So I think interactivity just has to be, we'll see. I don't know if the forms are can be put together.
You know,
yet.
I rode Smugglers Run the other day with Chris, and we got put with this group of 4 people who, let me tell you, I understood where they were coming from in terms of how they experienced the ride, which, you know, they completely didn't enjoy it. But at the other hand, they were also, I'm really sorry, they were not very bright people.
Okay.
And and so,
but that's
the whole experience, they're just not, they weren't paying attention to any of the instructions. As a matter of fact, even the point where the cast member was explaining hit buttons that light up, right? They're talking over the cast member to each other saying, I don't know how this works. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, just wanted to tell them, if you quiet down, they will explain it to you.
But that's too, but in my mind, in defense of those people, I'm kind of like, they shouldn't have to.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Have that kind of experience. You know, you want to, you know, you shouldn't, you know, if the design in itself should, and this is what Walt understood so well and instilled, you know, to his Imagineers, and those Imagineers instilled to the great second generation Imagineers, who are, most of them are gone from the company, something the Imagineering Story didn't tackle.
R.I.P.
Is that a successful design of an attraction or a theme park is in tune with human instinct. So people naturally flow this way. There's a natural sense of crowd flow, right? This is why at the time people view Disneyland as like a modern marvel in terms of urban design, and has to this day affected how urban planners design cities. It's just a fact, because it's so in tune with the way humans naturally work psychologically in terms of crowd flow. So if you have an attraction where you have to give instructions multiple times to people and they still don't follow it, I think that's a design flaw in terms of the form of what a theme park attraction does in general. It might be, the ride might be interactive, but I don't know if it's intuitive. And I think theme parks in general are, why they're so emotionally appealing and emotionally effective, is that they're intuitive. It's like you're like, this park understands me in some unexplainable way. And I don't know if that is present with this level of interactivity in an attraction. I'd like to be proven wrong, because again, this is kind of, this is kind of form opening. This land breaks the rules, and that's a very exciting thing. But at the same time, I think there are a lot of flaws that come with that.
Okay. Yeah, well, I guess I should point out, I think the best crew, or I guess the best group of people you should have when going... Well, I'll start this off by saying Smugglers Run, it's a pretty cool ride. For me, as like a non-local who doesn't get to experience it like once a week, because when I went on, I think almost every time I went on with our friend Mark, who is like really hardcore when it comes to Smugglers Run and like getting the highest score possible in like the app. And I feel like the best crew that you could have is to have a bunch of people, all 6 people who are really, I guess, like hardcore about trying to get all the coaxium containers and like trying to reach the highest bounty possible. But if you're just...
And it shouldn't be that way.
Yeah, and if you get paired like you guys were talking about with people who don't really care, then you don't have as great of an experience.
Well, it's not even about caring. I think when you go on an attraction, you care very much about what you're about to experience, in the same way that you buy a ticket to a movie, you sit in the seat, even if you've had all these critical thoughts about it before going in, all of a sudden you start caring very much about what you're about to experience, because there's time involved. You don't want to be, you want something to affect you and be good. I don't think it's about caring. I think it's about just it being too complex. So people care very much, but they might not understand how games work, how interactivity like that works. Yeah.
I'll tell you something I find dangerous about Smugglers Run.
Oh, okay.
And I might be the only person that has this opinion, because okay, a lot of people know about me that I do not care for sports. And the reason is because I don't understand sports. I don't understand sports in the sense that I'm not a competitive person. I don't feel the need to compete with others on anything. That's why I don't play board games. I don't play sports. I don't play video games. I don't compete in any way with people, because I don't have a single competitive bone in my body. I like working with people. I like activities that involve teamwork on an effort of completing a task as opposed to competing. So when I ride rides like Smugglers Run, I see some people who love competitiveness.
Yeah.
And they go crazy. They can't stand, when someone's not doing something on the ride correctly.
Yeah.
And then we get off the ride and they're like, oh, this person, they didn't know how to do this and that. And I'm just like, just have fun, just enjoy it. I mean, I understand what they mean. Some people, they don't know how to operate the ride and they make mistakes, but through their eyes, they go, oh man, we didn't get that second box of coaxium. And for me, I feel like, oh, well, that was fun. We crashed into stuff. I felt, bumpiness, and I enjoyed the sensation of crashing and losing. So it's like,
Yeah.
I might be the only person that feels that way. But I think what's so dangerous about Smugglers Run is that it encourages people to get angry at each other.
Okay, yeah, I see.
Yeah. Which is, I agree with this. Even though you would think the design intent is that of teamwork. All right, you 6 people, you have to work together to pilot this ship. But intuitively, what it brings out is like, oh man, I was stuck with these assholes who didn't know how to pilot the. I'm so
Jeremy just popped off right there, you guys. Holy cow.
Was I the first person to break and forget?
I think that is.
I think we chiseled into Jeremy's competitive bone.
Guys, this is a historic moment.
Funny thing is, anyway, I'm quoting guests. Oh God, if that did genuinely offend anyone, I am sorry.
Bob Iger will remember this.
But there is a point here. Intuitively, it does make some guests who are competitive, who will walk away going and maybe say even to the people to their faces, like, you guys suck. Are you dumb? Do you not know how to pilot this? And it's like, a theme park attraction experience should not have people's days ruined by guests being mean to each other.
Yeah, okay.
A successful theme park attraction actually unites people. Wow, we just had this collective experience. I think that's the intent, but it's not necessarily in tune with human instinct. Like the instinct to use swear words on when you're talking to your friends on a podcast.
Well, there is no official rating for Matterhorn Mondays, so it's not PG, it's not PG-13, it's not R-rated. So I mean, you guys.
I don't think I said the worst word in the book.
That's
true. I hope that everybody's okay, and we'll move on.
Well, I'd like to close off the Smugglers Run discussion first by turning my camera back on. Okay, here we go. Now, last bit on Smugglers Run, I'd like to propose something to you guys. Would you be angry if Disney flat out made a Star Tours version 2 just in the Millennium Falcon instead? Have 6 people in a chair, maybe have an animatronic Chewbacca that's piloting the Millennium Falcon, just like Star Tours. Would you be angry if they did that, or would you prefer to have this current video game style attraction that we have now?
I would rather have the form that they're going for refined and built upon and prove us wrong that interactivity at this complex level can be in tune with human instinct, can be intuitive, can be successful, as opposed to pandering and going and giving a completely different experience. So I think people would be angry because they'd be like, wow, they backpedaled. I also think I would rather the Imagineers, if they're really fascinated by the potential for interactivity in terms of guest experience, which I don't think it's good for guest experience yet, artistic value, it's certainly, and I think I'd rather them refine the artistic value of it and make sure that the guest experience value of it matches the level of artistic experience. Because right now, I don't think it's a very good guest experience. We've highlighted many different scenarios and personal experiences. But I think if they backpedaled, it would not get a good response.
Okay. Alex, what about you?
So I know a lot of people watching right now, either at this very moment or in the published version of this episode, they're probably thinking, no, keep it the video game version. Keep it the version where you have to work together to get coaxial. To those people, I say, did you guys know that if you don't touch the controls of the ride still happens from start to finish all the way to the very end?
That's true.
Nothing you do in the ride matters. I think the only thing you can possibly do to affect the difference in the ride is getting the second box of coaxium and gaining more points. Yeah. Points which, by the way, at the moment are arbitrary because they mean nothing. So
that's also true.
So that is true. Well, they also mean nothing in other game attractions.
So basically, the ride right now is Star Tours with buttons that make noises. That's basically, you're already doing. So if I were to say right now, no, we should have it so the ride is more like Star Tours, that's already what it is. And so
minus the emotional connection with the audience.
Yeah, minus the emotional connection with the audience. But anyway, all that being said, I think this question is too complex even for me to answer, because what I want out of the parks is very different from what people want out of the parks today. So what I want out of the parks is what we saw towards the end of Walt's time, with these highly immersive attractions that were more like experiences that you kind of floated through, as opposed to what people want now, which is video games in a three-dimensional place. So,
however, I mean, this is great. I mean, I would hate for us to talk 3 hours and go back and forth about this, but
yeah,
the question I would pose is that the case? Rise of the Resistance is a classic adventure style attraction that does push the form of both trackless ride system, and we'll get into this later.
Yeah,
but and a ride based on a movie, basically, as an adventure dark ride thrill ride combination, a la Indiana Jones Adventure. It is successful in that you the audience are a character participating in the story. However, everything happens to you. You process everything as an audience. So and that is getting rave reviews. People love this attraction, and we'll get to our opinions about it later because I like it too. That's a spoiler for my opinion. So I think people still want the same thing you want, Alex. Because Smugglers Run kind of, after all the hype, it kind of has the same kind of mixed reviews that we're giving it right now.
Yeah.
Most people I talk to, most opinions that I read are that it didn't match the level of hype. Everyone thought this was going to be the e-ticket. I think it is kind of an underwhelming experience for a lot of people.
I think what's funny about Smugglers Run is how many people, and I do mean a lot of people, don't understand the concept of if the button lights up, press it. Yeah. They don't understand that concept.
Because they don't understand that they have to be expected to play a game when they're going to a theme park. I think that there's a miscommunication that doesn't quite work with what a guest expects when they are going to a park, which the primary purpose of going to a park is recreation. You know, I think it's just a design. I think it's just a design flaw, and hopefully they have their eyes on the future and they're like, no, we will make interactivity. We will prove to you that interactivity is intuitive in theme parks, and this is just this is the prototype. That's my feeling about Smugglers Run.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I guess to close off the Smugglers Run discussion, I do have...
Yeah, we should.
My final note here. I feel like I'd enjoy Smugglers Run better if I was able to visit, or I guess to ride it more frequently. Like if I was a local, I could go experience the ride more, try and, get better at the controls, because it is kind of confusing when I think on the right pilot, I think...
matters.
I mean... Still, on one of the pilots where you go up and down, I think the controls were reversed or like inverted, so you like pull up to go down, I think, or down push down.
Oh yeah, that made sense to me.
For some reason that went right over my head, but I feel like I feel like I'd enjoy it more if I was able to go back, once a week probably, and try and get better scores, get more more credits, I guess. But anyways,
yeah.
Moving on from Smugglers Run, what should we move on to next about the land? I don't think we've talked about the. I guess like the land itself, the amount of theming that was put into it. I mean, sure, Disney's touted it as like the most immersive land they've ever done. And I have a proposal for you guys at the end of this, or I guess like a philosophical question at the end of this part of the discussion. I don't know if it's just me. It could be just me, but since I've gotten into this sort of YouTube Disney history kind of stuff a few years ago, whenever I see like these immersive lands, like when I first visited Galaxy's Edge, I don't know if it's just me who feels this way, but whenever I look at something that looks like it should be made of like a certain material, like I guess minus the rock work, like you see things that are supposed to be made of metal in the land, like I guess like the image I'm showing here on screen of the entrance of Rise of the Resistance. For me, it doesn't, I don't know, again, this could just be me. It doesn't look quite like metal to me, and that sort of takes me out of the experience. I don't know if you guys have sort of experienced this, but it's the same thing when I've seen the ride-throughs of Rise of the Resistance. Again, I've just seen the ride-throughs. I haven't been on it in person. But the texture of like some of like when you enter the big Star Destroyer scene, like when you first exit the ship into the big room, you'd assume a Star Destroyer is supposed to be made of like steel, metal, right? That's like sort of what runs through my head. But when I look at like the materials itself, it doesn't quite look like metal. I don't know if you guys know what I'm talking about, but that's sort of, for me, sort of detracting
I do, but
part.
I know what you're
land.
talking about, but for me, it doesn't take away anything.
Really? Okay. Interesting.
You know what I think? For one thing, I mean, I know what you're talking about, but I think that's almost on purpose, because would you really expect things in a galaxy far, far away to be made of earthly, stuff? I mean, what if these are types of materials that we've never seen before? I mean, think about it.
Yeah.
You got, I mean,
you just got owned, Matt. That's a really creative response, Alex.
Star Destroyers and things are massive objects. Would they really be made of super heavy steel? They'd probably be made of something that they found on another planet that is like metal, but super lightweight and super like tough. So it probably wouldn't even be anything like what we see on Earth. So it would probably have a whole different texture. What might act like steel in a Star Wars world would feel like granite rock, so
I do though, Matt, want to respond to what you're saying. The company touts it as the most immersive land, as if it's like the first immersive land that's ever been made. Well, I don't find it very immersive. In its design, the way that it feels like a realistic town, it is. But New Orleans Square is, I think, historically, and same with Main Street, two of the most immersive lands that have ever been built. They're not like that anymore, but there was a time where all the shops on Main Street would have been authentic. There was a time the same principle applied to New Orleans Square. There was a time where you could wander the alleyways and the streets of New Orleans Square. They weren't blocked off. There would be, I don't want to say characters, but cast members, like citizens of New Orleans, of that period, transporting you back to that period. There has always been, from day one, a dedication to immersion thematically. And this is something I've talked about for a while, I don't understand why they're like Galaxy's Edge does something new in that the cast members are a part of the world that they're in, and the shops are authentic to the land. No, they just cut the funding for all that stuff in the rest of the park.
Disney just got owned, you guys.
Yeah.
It's true.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's true. Every time I go down Main Street and I see the Dapper Dans with microphones on, like body mics, and their singing is funneling through the speakers, I'm like, that's a thematic fail.
Yeah.
Instantly. It goes back to what John Hench wrote in his brilliant book about theme park design, which anyone who has an interest in Disney history or theme park design or theme parks in general or design in general or theater design, or any type of design, any art, any visual art of any kind should read this book because he's a real master. Talks about how the thing about theme park design is it doesn't take much to upset it all, which are his words. And he lists different scenarios in which the guest can be taken out of the immersive world that they've been put in. And I think putting microphones on the Dapper Dans, which really okay, we don't need to get off on this. I'd love to talk about this, but it's off topic. So let's just move on, shall we?
Well, I would like to add something about this trouble with the immersiveness that Jeremy feels towards Galaxy's Edge, because I'm sure Jeremy would agree the place is highly detailed.
Yeah,
but
brilliantly so. Yes,
but I agree it lacks that weird sense of immersion that you get from old Main Street and old New Orleans Square. And I can tell you, as soon as I point out what it is, you guys are all going to be like, that's it, that's exactly what it is. What Galaxy's Edge lacks, after all its detail and after all the work they put into it, it lacks intimacy. It lacks that feeling of being able to be surrounded like a cozy blanket of all this stuff. And that's what Main Street is. When you said earlier, Jeremy, you said you walked from Critter Country into Galaxy's Edge, and you said, wow, it feels like Florida. Well, I felt that same way too the first time I walked into Galaxy's Edge. I said, wow, this feels like I'm walking into a Florida thing. And the reason why I felt that way is because there's a big difference between the way the Florida parks feel versus Disneyland, which is the Florida parks, everything about them is very large and very grand. Their Main Street is pretty much full scale. I mean, yeah, there's elements to it that look miniature, but if you look at the actual size of the buildings and if you were to take measurements, it would equal the size of a building in real life of that same size. And the reason they did all that was because they wanted to wow people with the grand scale of Walt Disney World. So Walt Disney World has carried that tradition of building these grand, giant places. And when they brought that design, i.e. Galaxy's Edge, into Disneyland, it totally takes away from Disneyland's quiet intimacy and turns it into this grand, in-your-face thing.
Right, yeah. And
so as detailed and amazing as it looks, it lacks that coziness, that feel that Disneyland usually gives you.
Yeah, it's called thematic consistency and knowing what park you're designing for, which is, yeah. I'd like to ask, well, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say, I would genuinely want to know what Kim Irvine's opinion. She's the art director of the park and one of the last standing second generation Imagineers mentored by the greats of the greats. I would love to hear an honest opinion about or not even an opinion, just I want to hear an explanation from the Imagineers so I can be proven wrong about how...
Explain yourselves.
Yeah. No, let me put it this way. I want to be taught how, excuse me, how Galaxy's Edge blends with the rest of the park. Maybe I'm missing something. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Kim, if you're watching, we love you. Please come on the show.
That would be great. That would be.
Yes, we'd love to have you for an interrogation. I mean,
no, she's already gone through. She's gone through too much of fans berating her for the wrong reasons.
True. We'll turn off the chat, Kim. Turn off the comment section if you join us. But anyways, I guess one thing we haven't noted, and we'll move through this quickly because we still have 2 other topics that we got to talk about.
I know.
We could spend an entire episode talking about Galaxy's Edge, I'm sure.
I know, but there's topics that are related to Galaxy's Edge, so maybe we can move on and all those things can be brought up again.
Okay, well, I'm
not going to tell you how to run your show.
My final point that we haven't touched on is the Play Disney Parks app with the data pad.
Now.
And I'm sure this part will be brief. I feel like
I don't
Play.
know.
Oh my gosh, there's a million words to be said already. I, for one, am a big fan of the Play Disney Parks app and the fact that you can sign up for different quests to do, run around the land, find different barrels to try and scan and help out the First Order or the Resistance or whatever you want to do. I'm a big fan of that. I hope they find a way to, I don't know, improve on the app, because I've said in the past, the app, I guess all Disney apps are terrible in that they're very laggy, they're very stuttery, not just specific to the Play Disney Parks app, but that's, from my experience, I guess I should say, they're all pretty not well optimized, but yeah. That's my only note, I guess, on the Play Disney Parks app. I'm a fan of it. I wish I could have spent more time running around the land and trying to do all the quests. Yeah.
But I have a question for you, Matt.
Oh, okay.
Would you have rather spent all your time running around the land, decode things and help the Resistance, or would you have rather spend all your time walking around the land and admiring the detail?
I feel like you can do both at the same time. I feel like they can go hand in hand.
in fact, actually, in defense of the Disney Play app, in terms of Galaxy's Edge, it does allow you to actually run around and notice and be very keen with certain markings and details. However, I'm about to get onto your side now. A way to improve the app is I would instead of just wandering around and having things happen on your phone when you see things, I'd rather actually affect physically the landscape of the land. Something happens physically.
Maybe like you push the wrong button and then the land just explodes.
Something I also think that having digital interactivity, I think this is the first time it works in some degree with the experience of the land. Introducing digital interactivity in like New Orleans Square doesn't make, and takes me out of it. Like, and it's really bad in Florida when you're like in Liberty Square and you're in the line for Haunted Mansion and it's like, use your phone and there's a digital screen in front. It's like, we're supposed to be in colonial America, and that doesn't work for me at all. However, the idea of having some kind of digital personal interactivity with your phone, with your cellular device in the land was a part of the design of, was a part of the concept of, was built into the concept of the land. And so I think it's the first time that works to some degree either. I would just rather it be more layered and detailed.
I went to Galaxy's Edge with some people, and they wanted to play the Parks app. And I don't play the Parks app, it's just not my thing. I'm not an electronics gaming person. Just don't do that.
Alex isn't a gamer, you guys.
I'm not. But I let them just wander around and whatever, and I'm following behind them. And I'm admiring the details of the place. I'm like, oh, look at that. Oh, that's a reference to that thing. And they're just on their phone the whole time. Oh, and we got to go find this and that. And so I'm sitting there and I'm just like, oh, hey, that's a reference to, Phantom Menace. And they're like, huh? Oh, I've never seen that before. I'm like, might have if you weren't looking on your phone the whole time trying to play the game, So, I mean, true, it adds its own layer of detail, but then it also distracts from the detail around you. But Contreras-wise, if I wasn't looking for the physical details of the place all the time, I wouldn't have that feeling of, okay, I'm over it that I have right now. So maybe I'd still be looking for those details in between Disney Parks app.
Yeah, it's kind of true. An impression I felt about the land was very much like, all right, I've seen it, I've experienced it. Off to Disneyland, basically.
Yeah.
You know, not in a bad way, but like I don't know how much, as to use the words of Tony Baxter, the land is designed with the 20th visit in mind.
That's
and more
true.
like a visiting a marvel and being like, well, wow, now I'm getting to experience it. All right, I've experienced it. I think Rise of the Resistance as an attraction might change that dynamic, but as the land as a whole, I don't know. I don't know if it feels that way for other people. That's how it feels for me, though. Just kind of like, it's a marvel. I got to experience Galaxy's Edge, and I don't need to go back.
I have a fast pass
but
for
I do
Pirates
need to go back,
get to.
though. There are things to exactly.
Well, anyways, I'll save my philosophical question for when we finish talking about Rise of the Resistance, because
wait, Matt has a
because it's gonna
that he actually had to think about.
I mean,
well, watch how this philosophical question is like, should Mickey premium bars be so?
I promise you guys, it's gonna be a good one. It has to do with Galaxy's Edge, but I feel like we should.
You want to wait till
pass
after, because it's gonna take all of the time.
Yeah, it will be. I'm sure it will be a pretty lengthy one, but I guess final note.
I hope it's not, because I have a lot to do, but it's. But I'm happy to be here.
Oh, I need to feed my cat also, so we got to get this done.
All right, let's keep going.
Okay,
concise but passionate. Let's do it.
Final thoughts on Galaxy's Edge. I like it.
Move on.
Okay.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought you were asking for our final thoughts, and I was like, no
oh
time.
My
move
gosh.
on. No, what are your final thoughts on Galaxy's Edge, man?
No, that was it. My final thoughts was that I like it, and I'll probably end up going back in the future.
Yeah, of course.
Is that yours? Okay.
Jeremy just running the show.
I like it. I enjoy it. I'm very excited to experience Rise of the Resistance when it comes out in Disneyland, of course.
Maybe next May we'll do a 1-year recap of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and see where the land has come since its opening, and our
great idea
1-year thoughts on it. But anyways, for our second topic of the show, have you guys been watching the Imagineering Story, you guys? It's a pretty great series. Yeah, it's a pretty great series on Disney Plus. Just wrapped up, I believe, 5 episodes. It was 6 episodes on Disney Plus. If you guys have not watched it, really great series. And I'd like to get into the short little discussion about the final couple episodes of the show, because if you guys have seen the show, you'll know it goes basically from Disneyland's inception all the way up to today, Galaxy's Edge, and some brief, I guess, sort of glimpses into the future of what the parks have in store. And from the very beginning of the announcement of this show, I was very interested to see how these filmmakers would handle the final episode, see how they justify things like Guardians of the Galaxy Mission Breakout, things like Pixar Pier, even things like putting Galaxy's Edge inside of Disneyland, which, us on the show don't necessarily agree with. Same with, Pixar Pier, Mission Breakout, not necessarily thematic to California. So that was really one of the things I was looking forward to seeing in this episode. And I'd like to ask you guys how you thought they portrayed this sort of era, I guess I should say, of the Walt Disney Company, of Imagineering, from when Bob Iger came in, stepped up to the plate, and like I said, installed things like Mission Breakout, Pandora, Pixar Pier, even Galaxy's Edge. I'd like to know how you guys thought they handled that. And yeah. Let's start with Jeremy
you
here.
Ask that in less words, because I didn't.
I got it. I understood. I
Oh,
understood.
good, because I didn't.
Wait, Siri just went off.
Matt.
Okay. Anyways.
Matt is asking us how we felt that the Imagineering story handled basically the past 15 or so years of the parks and the new expansions and things that are currently being added. And stuff like that. So in asking that, I've like totally like lost my train of thought. I mean, in rephrasing that, I don't think they handled I don't think they handled the history side of it well. Because obviously, I mean, you had to expect this when going into the series, that at a certain point it was going to stop being a history documentary and a behind the scenes look at current Imagineering. I mean, that was just inevitable. However, there were some slips in the cracks. While I don't think they really confronted or took the time to justify why these additions work or are improvements, with the exception of like episode 5 where they go into redoing California Adventure.
Yeah.
They didn't really take the time to justify why Mission Breakout works better than Tower of Terror, which would have been their optimum opportunity to be like, hey, Disney fans, we know that this was a controversial thing. Here's why we think it actually works. And then there's a discourse, as opposed to handling it like it received outcry it received a lot of criticism, but then they were proven wrong. It's like, you can write that in the script, but I need you to actively show us. And the funny thing is, they really begin this segment. They talk about Pandora as well. And the segment begins, and I think Pandora is wonderful to a certain extent. They start that segment by asking Joe Rohde,
oh yes,
something about like, has there ever been a project you were assigned that didn't excite you? And he said, yes, there have been projects that don't excite me, but I have to find what's exciting about the content. Otherwise, the land isn't going to be good. And that was their segue into Pandora.
Yeah.
which I think is hilarious. No, I was expecting these final 2 episodes to be like Bob Iger saved Imagineering, which he did. He's given them a ton of money, but he's using them, and because of the shifting of, it's the thing, I like Bob Iger. I mean, in some area, in terms of him being good to Imagineering and believing and putting billions of dollars into theme park projects. I mean, that's a huge deal, but he needs people around him who want the parks to be not just marketing tools. And I was expecting these final 2 episodes to be the kind of, I don't want to say the propaganda, but to be the kind of like glossing over the actual like history and justifying creative decisions, and more so what it was, which was just like, and they're working on this, which is really cool, and they're working on this, which is really cool, and we're working on this, which is really cool. That being said, the first 3 episodes were great stuff. I'm assuming we're gonna talk about the Pirates of the Caribbean controversy.
Yeah,
in a little bit, right? Oh.
Yeah, we'll get to that, Alex. Before we get to that, what are your thoughts? Going off of what Jeremy said there.
I was surprised at how truthful they were, the past and their mistakes in the first 3 or 4 episodes. I was surprised to see them admit the things that they did wrong, especially particularly with the creation of all those cheap parks, like MGM Studios, Paris, Hollywood Studios, Hong Kong, all that. I was surprised to see how open they were about admitting their faults on that. But like Jeremy said, I kind of knew that as soon as they came into the modern day, where all the stuff they've created recently under Bob Iger's, reign, that that they were going to be a lot more, well, this is, how it should be, even though it's not. I don't know if that makes sense, but
yeah, it does. Yeah.
For instance, I have to say that there was something that bothered me. There's an Imagineer, and I don't remember his name, but you'll probably know who I'm talking about as soon as I say it. And I must say, I have to apologize first if this guy ever sees me talk about this. Because
oh gosh.
because I'm gonna admit some things. I'm gonna admit some things I don't like. And it's not him personally, it's his creative direction. There's this Imagineer that was like one of the head designers of the original Disney California Adventure. And a lot of the ideas and Disney California Adventure version 1.0 was all done by him. A lot of those ideas.
Okay.
He created.
I know who you're talking about, and I'm gonna come in with guns and defend him in a minute. But continue what you're saying.
He created a lot of this stuff, and then in the TV show, The Imagineering Story, he talks about how all this stuff didn't work, and so we knew this, but we were kind of forced to do it. So I thought, okay, that's great. But then he talked about how he came up with the idea of Cars Land and how it was going to be Car.
Yeah.
And, and he was, he came up with this whole thing, and I could not help but look at the original idea for Car Land, not Cars Land, the original idea for Car Land, and go, that screams DCA 1.0. That it looks like something, I'm sorry to say this, but sucks. And thankfully, though, he was able to salvage his idea when the movie Cars came out. And in a strange but convenient twist, all his original ideas suddenly became interesting once you input the characters from Cars into those ideas. And I'll admit, it works. But if Cars had never come about and he had built that land, no one would be going there. They'd be demolishing it right now to build something else. And so anyway, my whole thing about that part is that Imagineer is still there to this day, and I don't like any of the work that he produces. But anyway, but off of that part into the other part about the show itself. I just think that it's funny that they used their truthfulness in the first 3 to 4 episodes in order to establish some form of trust with the viewer. Like, okay, we're getting the truth. And then they betrayed that trust by saying, look at all the stuff we did in the recent years, and everything we did was done with the best intentions, and now it's the best thing we've ever done. So I don't like how they used the truth to make their current decisions look like it was a good decision. And lastly, about the show, oh no, I think that's it. I think that's it. Okay, let's go. All right.
I agree with you, Alex, about let me put it this way. It did not, everyone's talking about how, oh my God, them being honest about California Adventure, that's bold, that surprised me, that was really good of them to do. I was like, it was very not surprising to me, because what they did is they used that very similar to what you were talking about as a way to then be like, to transition to, then now we fixed it once, but then they kind of muddled over the transition from fixing it to then like doing what they're doing to it now. But they basically used being like California Adventure didn't work so that they could say we're making it work by making it this weird ambiguous park.
Yeah.
But they did do a good job sewing together those threads between the first redo, which was great. There was a period in 2012 where I thoroughly enjoyed that park.
Yes.
And I don't know why they are like, no, maybe they're just like, they're like, no, it's still not perfect. We must this. And I don't know if they're like mad scientists about it, but there was a missing link between the 2012 redo and what they're doing today. First of all, did you notice they didn't talk about Pixar Pier?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like, unanimously at the same creative level as like DCA 1.0. Not very good and cheap. And it's like, if they were so bold to admit past failures like DCA 1.0, that's not bold. What's bold is to say, like, something we've just did isn't as good and maybe we're on the path to fixing it, but they're not going to do that. That's why this series was great, right? The series was fantastic. The footage, the amount of unearthed footage and interviews with like John Hench and Mary Blair. I mean, that was gold mine. I want the full audio of both of those interviews. But of course, at a certain point, it was going to be, well, we can't talk about that, and we can't talk about that, and we can't really give the full history about that, and we can't do that by the end, right? Because they have something they need to promote. They can't have a conflict of interest. This is why independent documentary projects like the Matterhorn Matt channel and Defunctland and all of Disney YouTube is
good to see you again.
This is why all of this community of these kind of we self-proclaimed Disney historians this is why it's important to have independent projects like what we do and Defunctland does and all other Disney kind of history channels do, because there needs to be a third party that is able to examine the truth of the history of these things and offer a point of view that won't conflict with what the company's trying to promote.
Oh, I remember what I was going to say last. And it's very quick, so I'll just add it. So, I find it funny watching the whole show from beginning to end and realizing just how much things are different at Imagineering. It went from a place where Walt would suggest a very basic idea, and then it would be up to the Imagineers to design that idea and come up with a way for it to work. And even then, some of the ideas were not even suggested by anybody higher up like Walt. Some of them were suggested by the Imagineers themselves. But nowadays, the way that Imagineering works is the head of the company walks in. This is probably since the days of Michael Eisner in the very beginning. But now the company CEO walks into Imagineering and goes, "This is what we want to build. Now you got to design it." So you go from things like, Adventure Through Inner Space, which was John Hench's idea from the very beginning, 100% his idea. Walt never suggested that. And you go from that and going, let's develop something completely new, to the day where it's like Imagineering is just the manufacturing company of the CEO's ideas. And that is really sad because the CEO is a businessman. Walt was kind of different. Walt was a creative businessman. You don't get Walt Disney's every generation. So it's not a good thing to have someone like Michael Eisner or Bob Iger, or probably soon to be Bob Chapek, being the people to go. I know. Being the people to go,
that's
all
another
right,
conversation.
this is my idea for a ride, and now you
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
again.
No, I agree. I agree. I mean, it's true. It was something that I think is lacking in a lot of these new lands. It's like I visit Pandora, I visit Galaxy's Edge, and I'm like, wow, this is really beautiful. Objectively, for some reason, there's always something in me that's like, there's something missing. I can't describe it. I don't know what it is. And I mention that to people, and they're like, it's Walt that's missing. And I'm like, no, it's not even that. It's you know what it is. And this is the Raleigh Crump New York LA Times profile from like a year and a half ago. Really made me be able to articulate this, because he made such an incredibly great point about this. Doesn't seem, in terms of the theme park design, there's not an opportunity really for these Imagineers to find their personal artistic voice and have it be in the project that they do, you know, because he described attractions as certain Imagineers, basically pieces of art. Like, you go on Small World and you can't help but it has a distinct artistic, unique artistic design that is unique to Mary Blair. Sure, Blaine Gibson and Raleigh Crump helped make that attraction as well. But Raleigh Crump will even say, I just knew how to make Mary Blair's designs three-dimensional. It's her distinct artistic voice that's in that attraction. And I think when you just make lands that are based on franchises, you have to do what the art director of those films did. You end up simulating, you end up replicating, you end up emulating. You don't end up putting yourself and discovering and actively crafting your personal artistic take on something. And I think that is what is lacking when I go to Pandora, when I go to Galaxy's Edge, is this level of having a personal experience with an artist. You know, even if you don't know, I mean, the general public doesn't know Mark Davis's name, but I think Pirates of the Caribbean is so creatively successful because it's very unique artistic style. You have, you know, there's not an opportunity for the Imagineers to really do that.
Okay, well, that kind of ties into the question that I had, which we'll get to later on, kind of. But
hopefully
now,
not much later.
Oh my gosh! Now I'd like to move on to I guess to give some context. They were talking about building the Shanghai version of Pirates of the Caribbean, and there were some words.
Oh yeah,
some words thrown around by the people that they showed. I don't remember the exact phrasing. And my notes I have here, it says one interesting quote.
I sort of kind of do.
Do you?
But yeah, no.
Okay.
I sort of kind of do because it stuck with me. But say what your notes are.
Okay, I'll say what my notes are, and then Jeremy can say what.
Interpret it.
Yeah. Basically. One interesting quote that I noticed when they were talking about building the Shanghai version of Pirates of the Caribbean was that they called the original ride in Disneyland. I don't know if they specifically used the word boring or not, but I think that's what they said. Boring or something similar to that, and that's why they decided to build a whole new ride experience for that version of the park.
Specifically based on the movies.
Yeah. New version based on the movies, yeah.
Was that all you had in your notes?
Yeah.
All right, let me clarify.
Okay.
So
translation.
There's controversy around this because I think of the way this information was presented in the documentary. So Bob Weiss, who's the head of Imagineering, great Imagineer. He's great. He's been there for, since the Tokyo and Epcot years. So basically this is how it started. He said, to do kind of like not necessarily market testing, but in a way it was, but he did it a very kind of old-fashioned Walt way. Basically, he brought, I don't know if it was executives or just random people, like Chinese citizens, basically, on Pirates of the Caribbean in California, and wanted to hear their opinions about it. What was their experience like? How did they like it? Because I guess they were planning on building a Pirates of the Caribbean for Shanghai Disneyland. And he said that the input that he received from the people that he took on the attraction was that it was slow, and I think boring was used, slow and boring. And so that's fine. He's just recounting what opinions he heard from people he brought on the attraction. I have no issue with that. The documentary goes on to imply that there is a fundamental design flaw with the original Pirates of the Caribbean, in that it's somehow not immersive. It doesn't put people in the center of the action. It doesn't. It's only well liked because nostalgia. And I find that those opinions are fundamentally false.
Yes.
Yeah.
If an attraction loses popularity, you can see that it loses popularity because there's no line, which is not always a good gauge, by the way, of if an attraction loses popularity. But you can tell, like Horizons, for it being this artistic marvel, it is artistic Imagineering, a great attraction. It is true, and people loved it. People heard about it. But in its final, months, it was not popular. You can tell when an attraction is not popular. Pirates of the Caribbean at Disneyland is not one of these attractions.
Yeah.
What bugged me is that they spent a portion of an episode.
The first episode, I think.
Really, I think so. When that great thing when Marty Sklar, I'm glad they started this documentary before Marty Sklar died. He's walking through the sets and explaining why this is, basically like not the one that started it all, but like the artistic peak of Walt era Imagineering. And he even said, like, every project we do, we measure it to the level of quality and detail of, the Disneyland Pirates of the Caribbean. So they went through so much time to say this is a great work of art.
This is where we set the bar.
This is where we set the bar. They went through a huge length to argue that it is like really immersive because everything happens around you and you're in the center of it, and everything happens to you and you experience it, which is all true. And then they went on to imply in later episode that somehow that's not the case. And I found that a very odd way of justifying, which doing a new Pirates of the Caribbean for Shanghai Disneyland. They didn't need to say that. I have nothing against the Shanghai Disneyland Pirates of the Caribbean. It's wonderful. It is immersive. It's really cool. I don't see why they needed to be like, we did that because somehow Disneyland's Pirates of the Caribbean isn't immersive, isn't, filled with adventure, and isn't well done. In my opinion, those two attractions are apples and oranges. They're only comparable because they're both technically Pirates of the Caribbean attractions, but they're not really. They're very different. I just found it odd how they had to included the argument that somehow Pirates of the Caribbean isn't actually a great attraction. That was the implication. Was the intention? I don't know. I would think not, but it was definitely the implication made.
I think what's going on is they're trying to convince people of why IPs in rides are so good. I think that
this is true.
Because right now the whole fan community is divided on the fact that, oh, look at all these IPs that are trying to make their way into original classic rides or replace classic rides. And everyone's so angry about it. But then Disney's like, we're just going to pepper in a little bit of this thing where we say, oh, original ideas don't sell tickets anymore. And so that's kind of what they're trying to do here. And the thing is it's not true at all. The problem is that the reason why Disney has trouble with getting IPs, or I'm sorry, non-IP rides in the parks successful, is because they've been doing it wrong for the past 30 years. If they would just do it correctly, you know, actually care about the projects that are non-IP instead of just trying to pump it out. Like Superstar Limo, that was non-IP.
I was just about to say that.
And it didn't didn't
it could be argued that it is IP.
So Disney looks at rides like that and they go, oh, see, non-IP doesn't work. And it's like, if you just do it correctly, it'll work.
Yeah, it's like Soarin' is I consider Soarin' to be one of the last great attractions built.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not IP, it's the world. It's literally where you yeah, I agree. I mean,
imperialism.
Well, it's cultural. But I agree with you, Alex. We don't need we've talked about this too much on the show. About IPs and parks. I think everybody knows our stances on that. But yes, I agree. It was curious to me because they also went through great lengths to be like, the Imagineers were all saying it was so exciting to be working on an original attraction for Hong Kong Disneyland when they were talking about Mystic Manor. Yeah. And then they go back to like, well, the famous Chapek line of like, this is our entry, whatever, or our point of entry is all the properties that we own. No, it's not. Your point of entry is the fact that you're Disney.
I had no idea that Danny Elfman created the music for Mystic Manor. I had no idea. I thought that was so cool because I love the music.
Does he work with Santa in the North Pole? Danny Elfman?
It's Danny Elfman, and he's the lead singer of one of my favorite bands, Oingo Boingo, or was the leader of the favorite band. Everybody should know who Oingo Boingo is.
Okay, see,
joke fell flat.
Matt's joke. I just got Matt's joke, but I'm so glad it fell flat.
Yes, me too.
That being said, it was cool that they included Danny Elfman's process in crafting the score to that attraction, and it was cool that he also gave not necessarily a shout out, but he was talking about how a point of influence for the score, of course, was the great Buddy Baker, who scored, who did the most amazing scores for attractions in the parks and also films as well. I would have liked for them to include the elements of scoring and Buddy Baker and George Bruns as a part of the earlier episodes, because I think they are a fundamental part of the Imagineering story. But it was nice that they at least mentioned Buddy Baker's importance at least once in the series.
Yeah, I agree as well. And I feel like,
I mean, they talked about the Sherman Brothers, of course, but
everybody loves the Sherman Brothers. No one knows who Mr. Elfman is.
Okay, everyone knows who Danny Elfman is. Okay, that's something you don't know, Matt. I think you need to confront that within yourself.
But people don't
know. But people don't know who Buddy Baker is.
Yeah,
and people should.
Yeah.
Does that? I think that might wrap up this discussion. Do you guys have any other additions you'd like to make on the final? All right. Well, we do have another great topic planned for you guys, but we'll get to it after we take a very brief, and then we'll get to voicemails. Avery has sent in some voicemails. We'll get to voicemails after the sponsor break, everybody. Yay, sponsors. Oh, I think the thing's broken. The sound doesn't play. I'm sorry, everybody. If you guys are wondering where you can find even more family-friendly live streams, just like this one, head on over to theliveplace.com. The Live Place is your headquarters for great family-friendly live streams. They cover anything from Disney to other vacation spots, various variety shows, and have some amazing streamers like Resort TV 1 and myself. Also, be sure to check out puckermint.com, where you can find amazing pins and stickers. Puckermint is based out of Albuquerque, New Mexico, just a few hours from where I live, And since I'm a big believer in supporting local artists, we decided to partner up. Be sure to use the coupon code down below when you make your next order. Again, that's puckermint.com and puckermint on Instagram. All right, Jeremy said he was getting some water, so I guess we'll take a little break. Oh, we'll listen to voicemails. I guess Jeremy doesn't have to. He doesn't need to listen. Alex and I can just listen.
He doesn't have to chime in on everything.
I'm right. Just kidding. Okay, well this voicemail comes from Avery, and it's about the Imagineering story. Oh, look he's back, everybody. Jeremy is back just in time to hear this voicemail from Avery. So let's go ahead and give this a play here.
To be honest, I liked the Imagineering Story. I think it was a good docu-series. I wish there was a season 2, like a season 2 to show more about the individual ride. Like there could, like, Haunted Mansion deserves its own episode if they ever do a season 2. But yeah, series finale, so sad about that. Maybe they'll do a season 2 in the future. Maybe they'll consider it. But for now, not happening. Anyway. Not surprised how they handled the new projects, because you have to realize, like, Disney will not allow something that has a lot of criticism of them. So of course they eventually turn into a more of a promotion of Disney and a promotion of their future projects to show what the parks will be like soon. So it was bound to turn into that, and that's what we got. That's the final result in that final episode. So it went from the history documentary to the present promotion of Chapekism and Chapek projects and Iger and the whole
Chapekism.
They made a bigger deal of the China deal than they did of Tokyo Disney Sea. The China deal got more of the spotlight than Tokyo Disney Sea, which is a shame, but can't do anything about it. But that's my thoughts. But that was just what I expected.
I'd like to point out to everybody who's clamoring for a season 2 of the Imagineering Story, or for individual episodes of the Imagineering Story about specific rides, guys, go to my channel, you guys. Go to Alex's channel, you guys.
Yes, go to my channel. Forget Matt's channel. Go to my channel.
Oh my gosh.
We have some exciting... well, let me say this. Historyland will be coming back in a couple of months.
Historyland is nostalgia bait.
Oh, no, it's not. My God. Shots
this
fired,
is
you guys.
The most ambitious project in telling a complete history of the Walt Disney Company than you've ever experienced before.
Yes.
So if you love the Imagineering Story, stay tuned.
Dem's fighting words, boy.
For some more, some more things. They are fighting words.
Put your dukes up, Alex. We're going to war. Just kidding. But yeah. Anyways, I just felt like I had that like repressed inside me. I didn't want to reply to any tweets about that, like on Twitter, saying that. But anyways,
no. That's no.
Yeah, well, maybe the Imagineering Story Season 2 will actually happen maybe in like 20 years if Disney Plus is still around. Then they can do a recap of the past 20 years, and then they can be more honest about why Pixar Pier sucks, about why Mission Breakout sucks. It'll come full circle, you guys.
Oh, it was really actually what was cool, even though there was kind of a lapse in justifying why these projects existed in the first place. It was cool to hear Joe Rohde, at the very least, if not justify why Mission Breakout was a good idea, at least explain what his design process was for Mission Breakout. And I agree. I always said that Mission Breakout is successful because it feels like a party. And I love it because he went into this detail about the sensation of going up and down, while you can build it up to be a scary experience like Tower of Terror. You can also build it up to be a funny experience. And I thought that was really cool.
You remember when they asked him if there's any projects he did that he didn't like?
Yeah.
And they segued to Pandora. No, I think he liked Pandora, I think that they should have segued to the Tower of Terror theme,
right?
Because that's probably the one he didn't like.
The question, as we mentioned earlier, the question was, have you done any projects that you weren't excited about? And he said, and I mean, the great Joe Rohde that he is, it's such a great response. Yes, but it's his job to find what's exciting about the project, even if he's not excited about it. So you definitely get that in Pandora. You definitely get that with Mission Breakout, even though I think it's a mess of an attraction. But, you know, you can see that he's not necessarily excited about it. I think he became more excited about Pandora as he found what was exciting about it. But with Mission Breakout, I can definitely see that it's definitely a project he was probably not excited about, but still used his brilliant design principles to make it work in the way that it does. You know.
Yeah, I thought they were
imagine if any other Imagineer headed that project?
What if Walt Disney built Mission Breakout, you guys? Wouldn't that be something? Came back from the dead. It'd be like, have you guys seen Spider-Man 3 where the guy turns into Sandman? It'd be like the opposite of that. Walt's ashes would come together to form Walt Disney, and then he would head the design of Mission Breakout. Anyways,
what a colossal waste of time. All right.
Yeah, that made at least one person laugh besides me, I'm sure. So shout out to that one person. Anyways, we do have a final topic to talk about. We touched on this very briefly, I feel like, last episode. Well, I guess last episode was more Alex, mine, and Chris's first impressions here of Rise of the Resistance. And now we're going to go in more depth, you guys, into Rise of the Resistance. As many of you guys... Ankle deep. No, we're going knee deep, you guys. We're going waist deep in Rise of the Resistance. We're going neck deep, you guys. Anyways. Yeah, as many of you guys know, Rise of the Resistance recently opened December 5th. I guess that's not that recent anymore. This December 5th in Hollywood Studios. And yeah, how should we start? I don't know how to start this discussion. Okay, well, let's start with my notes here. The way that they're letting people on the attraction. There is no standard standby line. There's no fast pass line for the attraction. The only way to get into the ride, I believe, Alex is looking very confused, so I could be wrong. The only way to get into the ride is to use the boarding groups through, I think, the Walt Disney World app, similar to the way Galaxy's Edge first opened.
That's only temporary.
Yeah, temporary. Similar to when Galaxy's Edge first opened, I believe they did it in both lands, where you had to sort of join the boarding group to get access into the land, which they've since done away with because, well, I guess we've talked about that. But anyways, I'd like to point out, I think this was Ian in one of Fresh Bake's recent videos who pointed this out, and it sort of stuck out to me about the boarding groups, because Disney is using the boarding groups, that eliminates the standby wait times to be posted. So now when people go on the Walt Disney World app, there's no way for people to look at the wait times to gauge, oh my gosh, the wait time's only 30 minutes, you guys, the ride's a failure. Or to be like the complete opposite, where the wait time's 4 hours long. I think another thing Ian also pointed out is that it eliminates people not on the ride to not be able to see when the ride goes down, or like when the ride breaks down. So instead of saying a wait time, it'd say closed for maintenance or whatever. None of that. So that eliminates that as well. And I think I did see floating around Twitter, if for some reason your boarding group was unable to get onto the attraction, Disney would gift a complimentary park hopper ticket to you, which was really generous. I don't know if they're still doing that, but that's really interesting to see. Yeah, what do you guys think about the boarding groups that they've been doing for Rise of the Resistance? I think Chris actually pointed out that he said he thought the boarding groups were going to be permanent for Walt Disney World's version.
I mean, all you have to do is go out to the outside of the ride and look at all the queuing that they built outside to know that it's not going to be permanent. You know, I mean, even look at ours. We have a very similar looking queue. It's all just snaking walkways, and they have that at Walt Disney World too. So that's how we know it. The boarding group thing is not going to be permanent. However, I will say that I wish it were. There's a theme park, and I'm gonna pronounce it wrong, you guys, so please forgive me. I believe it's called Efteling Park. It's in the Netherlands, and they have a ride there. It's a type of roller coaster, but it has no queue at all. The way that it works is you go up to the ride and you get a return time, and it tells you what time to come back and get on the ride. If you're late by more than like 5 or 10 minutes, then you forfeit your pass. But it prevents people from having to stand around in a zigzagging queue line. So they don't have any queue whatsoever. So anyway, so I'm like, I thought that was interesting because there's a few rides in the European countries, theme parks in the European countries, that actually use that kind of technique, and it works. And I mean, you know, it's one of those things where people don't feel like they're waiting in line, and I feel like this should be the future of Disney parks rides, is getting a return time immediately without any standby queue, because the return time is the standby queue. And I think that's how things should be run. Like I said, it works perfectly in other theme parks. They just don't do it in America because it's a whole new concept to us.
Well, the guest assistance system works that way these days. The newer version of the system, it's actually been getting a lot of complaints, not because it's a bad system for queuing, but just because it's a bad system for people with disabilities. But basically you go to different guest services areas around the park, in Disneyland anyway, and you say, you basically are like, I want to put on Haunted Mansion on my pass, and they go, it's okay, it's a 45-minute wait. They take off 10 minutes, and then you basically go through the fast pass queue if you don't need to go through the exit if you have a physical disability. And so basically you wait for the attraction while being in the park and can do other things, and that's nice. But oftentimes the lines have been so bad that oftentimes you end up still waiting extra like a long extra amount of time in line once you get to the physical attraction. Like, in some people can't be in the sun for extended periods of time. Some people, there's just,
but you see, Jeremy, the reason why it's like that is because they still have a standby queue. If you eliminate the standby queue and make everyone get a return time, then anybody with disabilities would just get slotted into other people's return time.
No, I think I agree with you. In general, as a queuing system, I think that'll work marvelously. And they touched upon this in the Imagineering Story, so I think that's something they're going to start to be figuring out how to implement park-wide.
Yeah.
Screw fast
I'm excited for that, though.
Is that a bad word? Like a bad phrase?
I mean, technically no, but I mean, everybody knows what I mean. So
I'm just trying to think of what sound effect I should use to blurp out Jeremy's slip earlier. So
like a oh boy.
Oh yeah, Mickey laugh. Well, I guess we haven't.
Or the ticket chime when you enter the park.
Guys, we're gonna be cursing even more from now on, just to put in that sound effect.
By the way, when you enter the parks and you either hear the pixie dust bring, or you hear the
there's like a
at Disneyland there's a thing where you enter the park and sometimes you'll hear like a whistle.
Oh yeah.
That's from Song of the South. That was Mr. Bluebird.
No kidding.
Huh.
Yeah, watch
to add on top of that.
Watch the Zippity Doo Dah
That's so cool.
song scene in the movie, and he does that exact whistle.
That's so cool. To add on top of that, if you find yourself rewatching Mary Poppins and you hear a certain dog whimper, you might go, "Where have I heard that whimper before?" Perhaps it's on Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh my gosh. We got layers, you guys. Layers upon layers.
Yeah.
This episode. I have Song of the South here. I can pull it up right now and show everybody. Just
Let's not do that. Can we move on, please?
Anyways,
we're already here against our own free will.
Yeah.
So
oh my
we
gosh,
could just move this along.
I think that's a Lego Yoda dying worthy moment. Well, anyways, I don't think we've heard Jeremy's first impressions, actually, or I guess just impressions in general of the attraction. Alex and I talked about it. We heard Chris talk about it. Now let's hear from Mr. Jeremy. What are your thoughts on Rise of the Resistance? As what is Alex laughing about?
He's laughing at the Yoda thing because that's the sound of Yoda like screaming as he's about to fight Mace Windu. Or no, not Mace Windu. Count Dooku. Sorry,
is it
Count Dooku? Yeah, that first scene where he first pulls out his lightsaber and they're like right about to jump at each other. That's Yoda going. Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyways, Jeremy, what are your impressions on the very ambitious Rise of the Resistance attraction in Florida? Well, I guess I should point out. Sorry, I keep interrupting. This is all based on us just watching ride-throughs. We haven't been on the ride itself, so our opinions most likely will change in the future once we have experienced it in person. Now you can.
Very important disclaimer. That's right. This is impressions based on great footage because we live in the modern age. My first impression was a mistake because I had just watched what was first released, which is always the case when a new attraction comes out, was just the trackless ride system portion of the ride. So I was like, okay, this looks fun, but I was underwhelmed. And then all the footage started to be released of the full Rise of the Resistance experience. And now I think it's pretty great, and I can't wait to experience it for myself. This is exactly where the idea of pre-shows were intended to do ever since the Haunted Mansion busted it wide open with the foyer and the stretching room. I still think, and I think this is at that caliber of pre-show where it's not a pre-show after all, is it?
Yeah.
It is. The ride has begun. And that's a successful pre-show. And because it's not a pre-show, it's the ride. And I think it looks phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. If I were to rank it, I'd rank it with, you'd have to rank these rides in categories. You know, I would put it with, it's definitely a contender for Indiana Jones Adventure. They serve the same type of function. It's an adventure attraction where you find yourself in a situation you weren't supposed to be in because you're just you're just a visitor, basically. It's a great it understands the form that it's trying to do. It expands it, it honors it, and it takes it to a whole other level. Technology-wise, that's a good transition. Technology-wise, as I was hoping, it seems that they have found a way to expand the form and potential for a trackless ride system. So they've made it exciting. We're like, oh, well, we can even put it in different ride systems and have there be multiple different types of ride experiences in an attraction, which of course, Tower of Terror, actually Indiana Jones and Tower of Terror simultaneously being built at the same time, busted that concept wide open. When with Indiana Jones, you put a motion simulator on a vehicle, and Tower of Terror, you had the first trackless ride system in an elevator shaft. which, of course, that is used in this attraction in a whole new way.
Yeah.
I don't know if people want spoilers. I think the spoiler rule, in my personal opinion, does not apply for attractions. Walt Disney walked the American public through the original Pirates of the Caribbean before it even opened. Okay. Because again, as Tony Baxter, I'm not blaming it on Walt. I'm saying it's the Tony Baxter principle of you're designing a ride for the 20th time. So if you watch a video of the attraction, it should make you want to go on it for the first time. Anyway, for the first of hundreds of times. Anyway, so my impression is ecstatic. I think I can't objectively say that this is a bad attraction. It's a fantastic attraction. In terms of it does exactly what it sets out to do successfully. Yeah, I can't demean this attraction. It's great. Is it the type of attraction I would like to see more of in the Disney parks? No. I want more
Diversity.
Spaceship Earths. Exactly. I want variety. However, this is still, I was about to say another swear word, but we can't do that. This is a fine. This is a darn good attraction. Darn good.
Well.
And yeah.
I'd like to. Oh, Alex.
You
were probably going to say something way more intelligent than what I was going to say. So please.
Well, that's
go
true.
Ahead.
So I was going to say that Matt and I said on our last podcast that it's important to remember that that it's okay to love a ride and think that, oh, this is my favorite, but let's also remember to never believe that a ride is perfect, because of the fact that once
Indiana Jones isn't perfect still, and it's still a fine attraction.
I'm not talking about you. I'm not talking about the viewers, because there's some people out there that use the word perfect in relation to Rise of the Resistance. And if you've resolved yourself to saying that this is the perfect ride, then there's no reason to ever exceed the quality of this ride. So that's all I wanted to say. But in terms of that, I also have to say that this seems like one of the best rides that Disney has ever built to this day for certain reasons. And there's things I find about the ride that I wish there was more, but nevertheless, I'm perfectly satisfied with the way that this ride is. I'm excited to ride it. I'm excited to experience it. I mean, it does look like a overall extremely well-rounded experience. And I'm going to try to be there for opening day. I believe me and Matt's new friend Brett is going to be there too, as well as Chris from LMG Vids, and then Matt himself is going to try to be there.
I will try.
If I have to, I will take a train to New Mexico, and I will kidnap Matt. And bring him back in a body bag. Yeah. Matt's all, that'd be great.
He's like, I'm so excited.
As long as Alex is the one paying for the train ride, I'm 100% fine with that. With that kidnapping. Yes. Just kidding. But yeah, Rise of the Resistance. I'd like to point out a little detail that I noticed, and this is touted, as the most immersive attraction. I'm sure Disney's been saying this, the most immersive attraction in the history of theme parks. I'd like to point out something that adds to that.
It's probably true.
Until we see what they come up with next, which will probably not be as good as this, but we'll see. But a little detail that I noticed that really adds to the immersion of the attraction. I'm going to skip to, this video comes to us from Blog Mickey. This is titled 4K POV New Star Wars Rise of the Resistance Full Experience Pre-Show. Well, I'll leave the link in the description, but I'd like to skip to 11:42 in this video. when you first get sent into the holding cell.
I knew you were going to do that.
I haven't seen a lot of people talk. Well, I guess it's not that important, but it's this level of detail that I really appreciate with this attraction. So you're sent into the pre-show, or not into the pre-show, sorry, into the holding cell, and up there you can see on screen. That's a screen or a projection. It's probably like a big TV style screen. I'm not sure. The thing to note is that those stormtroopers that walk past up there aren't real. It's a screen. But as we see coming up, as we see, oh my gosh.
Wait, I was saying it was good because it's actually maybe it was like, wow, it proved Star Wars is real.
No, that's actually Kylo Ren himself, Adam Driver. Every time someone rides through, but as you can see up here, that's a screen, but the shadows are still projected of the people walking up here, up on top.
So good.
And I just felt like that was worth pointing out because that's a really they didn't have to do that. They could have just had the screen, no shadow. People still would have been sold on it, but with this little addition that they decided to do, that really exceeds the bare minimum of what they had to do.
I want you to think. Okay, so we're all looking at this, going, "Wow, look at how crazy, like, immersive that is." But now I want you guys all to imagine how hard it must have been to put that shadow projection on the wall, because you have to think about the physics of a shadow. A shadow is usually, it can be long or short depending on where the light is coming from. And they had to figure out, where would this light be coming from? It couldn't just be, you can't just say, oh, well, behind them. Is it behind them below, behind them above? You know, and how does the shadow play on that diagonal ceiling? How does the shadow play on those diagonal bars? You know, are you going to see the shadow's legs only, or the shadow's torso only? You have to think about all those little things. I put out a tweet the other day saying that I've been very critical of this attraction since it came out, but I recently decided that I love this attraction, because when I thought about the details like that, you have to think how much stuff goes into it. There's another special effect, which I'm not going to reveal how they do it, because I think that's just, I don't want to ruin it for people. But if you look at the videos of the ride, you'll see what I'm talking about. There's the first scene when you get on the ride vehicles and they take you out and you're trying to escape, and you see stormtroopers blasting at you. If you look carefully at the ceiling in the videos, you'll see that what was solid walls, as soon as a blaster hits them, they disintegrate into something with a hole in it, a physical hole. And it's really cool because that seems so simple to people, but think about where did that physical matter go? I know how they did it. I'm not going to tell you how they did it, but when I figured out how they did it, I was like, you know, that I can't argue against this ride for its special effects. That is amazing. So yeah, I mean, just watch. I mean, the physical matter of that ceiling disappears in front of your eyes. Yeah, because it's been blasted away by a blaster. That is some amazing illusion work.
And when you think about the fact that all of that has to be automatically, as an automated reset every maybe minute and a half, maybe, to, you know, so that's also really cool.
Yes, that's true. Everything in this ride has to be reset. And think about it, in a traditional ride, a traditional Disney ride, special effects are triggered usually when a ride vehicle surpasses or passes through a beam of infrared light. That when that beam is broken, it triggers the special effect to happen. On a ride like this, you can't use that necessarily, depending on what scene you're in, because the ride vehicle may never clear an area where there's an infrared beam, or let's say there's a reflection on something and the infrared beam isn't broken correctly. So all this had to be done based off of their Wi-Fi system that they've been talking about for for years. Remember, we've been talking about how this whole ride relies heavily on Wi-Fi and it signals communication between the ride vehicles. All that is triggered by where the ride vehicles are and the Wi-Fi system knowing when to begin a special effect, like Kylo Ren's lightsaber going through the ceiling. Yet another illusion that I won't reveal how I know it works, but but it's one of those things where I was like, that looks more complicated than it is, and so
yeah, even like in this elevator, I'm not sure if don't think it's a real elevator. I'm sure it's just like the way they programmed the lights to make it look like you're moving up and down. But that is like, even just that, I feel like for me is enough attention to detail. Because like, yeah, I'm sure that's not like a real elevator they're going in. But yeah, Jeremy, do you have anything else you'd like to add? We're just sort of pointing out our favorite parts here.
We're talking about like the really cool state-of-the-art special effects, and then you're like, the elevator.
Lights.
I'm pretty sure it's just the lights. I'm like, no, but I agree with you. It's
I want you guys to also pay attention to like the hallway lights which illuminate the hallways. Notice how at first you pass by them and they're just ordinary white lights that illuminate the hallway. But then when something happens in the scene, those lights will change color to become show lights, which will set the mood. So if you look at that scene with the elevator again, look at the elevator and then you'll see when you enter it, the lights are all white. But then when Kylo Ren's lightsaber goes through it, all of a sudden the lights turn red. So that way it turns from just a scenery light to a show light, which illuminates things the way like a set stage light might do. I think that part is amazing because, as someone else mentioned, if you look throughout the ride, you won't see a stage light just hanging from the ceiling. You won't. Everything has been completely thought out, and so they use ordinary illuminating lights and then change them into show lights to make the scene look more immersive. It's just really cool.
That being said, one of my favorite things to do is if you're ever in the back row of Pirates of the Caribbean and you get to the end of a show scene, go ahead to turn around.
Yeah, it's
pretty cool to see things that you're not necessarily supposed to see, like show lights, which I always think that's really cool. But yeah, no, I mean, the level of detail it's great. I can't wait to go on this. It's going to be a very fun experience.
And you see right here at the beginning where the ride vehicle exited the loading area and you pass by two empty ride vehicles. Someone else was pointing out to me how amazing it was, or it was Chris actually, who pointed out to me that those empty ride vehicles are going to the very same loading area you just came from in order to pick up passengers.
But
they use it as a story element, saying, "Oh, tell those droids that we're transferring passengers, so that way they don't think anything is wrong." But those vehicles are going to pick up passengers. They're returning to the loading area. So they use that as part of the story. That is one of those mind-blowing things.
Oh, I love that so much. That is so cool.
Yeah.
I guess it is worth pointing out, when you do get the chance to get on this ride, try and get on the left track. Or I guess the first ride vehicle, because the first ride vehicle, I guess to point out, there are two separate, I guess, like ride paths that each ride vehicle takes. The first one, it's, I guess, what I'm trying to say is, in the big scene where is it the AT-ATs or the AT-STs, the big ones? I think it's the AT-ATs.
The AT-ATs. I don't call them AT-ATs. I call them AT-ATs.
AT-ATs? Oh, okay. Well, Mr. Star Wars.
A long time ago. A long time ago, we called them that, but now we call them AT-ATs. And I'm like, really?
Well, I guess what the scene I'm trying to point out here is this ride vehicle goes to the left, but the first one in front of you goes back up the other way. And right here is when the sort of cannons fall down and they actually shoot at you, unlike in this one where it's just the stormtroopers shooting. at you. So it's like you get shot
I'll
at
be
by one
happy
of the
with
18.
whatever ride
I mean,
vehicle I'm put in.
Yeah, but if you guys would like a better experience, try and get in the first ride vehicle. But
oh, by the way, you can tell from the way that the floor is scuffed how many wheels are beneath each ride vehicle. There are 3 wheels beneath each ride. That's one of those things that I observe. So when people ask me, how do you know that the ride vehicles have 3 wheels? You can't see them. I go, well, look at the scuffs in the floor. And when a vehicle comes to a stop, you see 3 separate little scuffs in the floor from where the wheels stopped. I'm just.
This is becoming a 3-hour episode.
I know. My gosh.
Sorry, everybody.
There was something else I wanted to say, but I can't remember. Well, I guess, it's worth noting this is one of the greatest. Oh, I guess we should briefly talk about what doesn't work for us in the attraction. Like show elements, parts of the ride that I guess maybe fall flat to us. And Alex and I sort of touched on this in the past episode. But Jeremy, just off these ride-throughs that you've seen, what has stood out to you that necessarily doesn't work for you in the ride?
I feel like that's so hard to answer. I feel like all of that will crystallize more once I've had a physical experience with the attraction. But personally, I don't. This is certainly a step in the right direction in terms of like having a linear plot in an attraction, like a beginning, a middle, and an end, and like a movie plot, basically. This is a step in the right direction. I don't know. It's a huge step in the right direction. That actually might not be a flaw. I don't know. I guess, it's a larger flaw, but just, and they talked about this in the Imagineering Story when they were like, why are we making Epcot Center? And the Imagineer said that Don Tatum said, because with all the resources that we have and creative talent that we have a responsibility to make something like an Epcot Center. And I don't know. It's like, I love this attraction is great. I can't wait to go on it. There's always a part of me when a new state-of-the-art attraction is released that's like, it's like we could be making really huge, culturally substantial things with Imagineering. It's why Walt was getting into urban planning. But it's great. I don't have any specific flaws, like the light there is finicky or this scene doesn't work for me. It's all great in my eyes right now, and I can't wait to go on it.
Anything I say would really be trivial. It wouldn't. The things that I find wrong with the ride don't matter that much. That being said, I'll tell you what I think. So
I would like more physical audio animatronics. That's all. That's all I'll say.
Yes, that's one of the things I was gonna say. Was I would like more physical, actual audio animatronics in the ride, because if you look at the actual on ride portion of the attraction, there's not very many, and you're supposed to be on like the head Star Destroyer, the lead Star Destroyer, which should have tons of people walking the aisles and everything, and there's nobody. The whole thing is empty. It's void of any like soldiers or anything. So I feel like there should be a lot more. Another thing is something Chris pointed out, which is Kylo Ren's animatronic and how he just does that weird, like squiggly, like way that he moves. I felt like they could have spent the money to make it look a bit more realistic, but they decided, let's just copy the animatronic that we have in the previous scene, And so, there's that. I mean, again, this doesn't matter that much, but, and then lastly, it has to do with the AT-AT walkers. They really wanted to have something that was huge like that in the ride. Unfortunately, the building is not tall enough for an actual full-size AT-AT walker. So the whole thing was done in forced perspective. But as soon as you go up the elevator lifts, that forced perspective is crushed. because
good point.
Because when you're down on the ground, you're looking up at them, so they look much taller than they really are. But you get on the elevator and it takes you up, that forced perspective is completely crushed to the ground, and you can see that they are really stubby looking things. But yeah, aside from those 3 issues, which again I must add is kind of trivial, I'd say I love the way this thing looks. I really do. But you know what? I have to say I told you so to some people, because you see that AT-AT Walker scene in the trailer, if you want to call it, for this ride. The promo thing, they showed the AT-AT Walkers looking down and blasting at you, and you can see lasers coming out. And everyone was like, "Oh yeah, you're gonna see that." I'm like, "No, those AT-AT Walkers won't move." They're like, "Yeah, how do you know that?" I'm like, "Because I saw them build it."
Yeah.
There's a giant piece of solid steel going all the way through the neck. The neck is not going to turn down. Anyway, but that was just something. Anyway, the point is that the ride is amazing, and I any problems, any flaws I find with it really don't matter in the big picture. So I think it's great. I really like it.
I guess the main question we should be raising here, how long will this ride last, you guys, with all the troubles they've had building it and trying to maintain it, even in comparison to Indiana Jones Adventure, some show elements have not worked for years. I am wondering how long some of these show elements here will last when they finally give up on trying to fix them, like with Indiana Jones.
We'll see. I mean, the only effect that I truly miss in Indiana Jones was the moving room that makes it look like you went through a different door at the beginning of the attraction.
Yeah.
Now you just always go through the center door. That's the only real effect that I miss, but it is going through an extensive refurbishment period, and I would hope that they're going to figure out a way to make that effect work again, because it really... it's a little detail, but it's so effective.
Maybe they'll make it work again with the actual moving mechanism.
Yeah.
I think it's cool.
That would be cool. That would be cool. Unless just all the doors are screens or something.
Oh.
No.
What if one of the doors opens up and this big monster comes out? It's like, oh, and it shuts the door.
That'd be cool. I hope they plus it in a good way and not in a cheap way, Like I hope that there aren't practical effects that are replaced with screen effects. That would be a shame. One of the great marvels of that attraction are the physical sets, and I hope that with why are we? Yeah, I'm like, wait, how did we get on Indiana Jones again? Oh yeah. I think similar things are bound to happen with Rise of the Resistance in terms of like, oh, I missed that effect. That was a nice little detail. But hopefully, like with Indiana Jones, I feel like that attraction gets minor refurbishment, goes through minor refurbishment periods like every 6 months to touch up certain effects. So hopefully Rise of the Resistance is met with the same maintenance.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I guess
they might add some animatronics as they go along in the year.
Ooh, that would be great.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
I mean, there's plenty of little nooks and crannies they could put a stormtrooper animatronic in,
I guess the final note that we should leave this attraction discussion on is the sending scene, where you go into the drop shaft simulator, and they touched on this in the Imagineering story, I believe, and I feel like this is really one of the highlights of the attraction when it comes to... I think one of you guys mentioned earlier about finding different creative ways to enhance the trackless ride system in general, and I feel like the drop shaft simulator, this part here, is a really genius way to do that. I'm excited and it even adds to the story too, because you see right on the screen outside you see him dropping, so I mean you'd assume drop.
Well, this was the scene that really made me rethink my criticism of the ride, because when I saw that in Imagineering Story, they showed that it wasn't just an ordinary elevator. It was
yeah.
simulator on an elevator,
Mm-hmm.
which the ride vehicle goes into.
Yeah, so amazing.
I'm like, that reminds me. That reminds me of a turducken. It's like a chicken inside of a duck inside of a turkey. I'm like, this is so complex. It's crazy.
Yeah, I love it.
And then you see, I thought when I first saw the video of the ride footage, I thought, okay, the vehicle goes into an elevator, and the initial, like being in the stretching room of the Haunted Mansion, just gives you that weird feeling of I'm going down, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay, now it's smooth. I thought that's what it was at first, but then when I saw that in Imagineering Story, how it was a simulator on an elevator shaft, I was like, okay, that's complicated. That's really cool. They actually took the time to design something brand new for that.
Yeah. I love that. It's also the kind of level of progression for all of these ride systems kind of converging at this point of intersection. You have Star Tours, which, you know, is one of the first big for just the general public motion simulator attractions. And then, you know, they go, okay, well, what if we put a motion simulator on a vehicle, and we can make it like you're in a bumpy Jeep, and we can make it feel like you're on rough terrain going up and down and this and that, and you get Indiana Jones. And at the same time, they're working on Tower of Terror, which is, okay, we've developed a trackless ride system, but it can't do much right now. So, but we have we're going to attach it to a drop shaft in an elevator, but actually then you go out into the Twilight Zone on a trackless ride system. And then, you know, now it's so cool to see these three technology ride systems converging to make one complete, complex, diverse ride experience. So it's really exciting.
It will truly meet when the trackless ride vehicle has simulator technology on board.
That would be pretty great. And you know what? I'm so impressed with how they've pushed the trackless ride system with this ride that I bet you that's not far behind.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
Yep, that's true.
Well,
that is true.
Closing on our again, this is just based off of us watching these ride throughs. We'll do a more in-depth discussion. Not that this wasn't in depth, but we'll do a more in-depth discussion once we actually get to experience.
We've all gone on.
Yeah, that'll be something. And now, because this show has gone on for almost 3 hours, I'd like to. I'll propose my question to you guys, and then we'll briefly talk about. We'll briefly address it, because on the subject of immersive lands like Galaxy's Edge, Pandora, maybe Marvel Land, I don't know, and even immersive attractions like these, do you guys think the general public will ever get tired of these sort of hyper-immersive interactive lands like we see with Galaxy's Edge or with Pandora?
Who's answering first? Oh, okay.
Whoever speaks first answers first.
My answer is no. On the philosophical principle that's being, the way that you phrase the question is, will guests be tired of immersive lands? Well, basically you're asking, will guests get tired of theme parks? The answer is no. I was arguing all lands are immersive lands. It's this weird marketing thing that Disney's doing, somehow arguing that now the new lands are immersive, the old ones weren't. So that it doesn't make sense. All lands are immersive. The point of a theme park is to be immersed in something that is crafted at different levels of detail. So no, I don't think guests will get tired. What they will get tired of, however, is the content that's within them. So if lands are only being designed based on current franchise trends, then, I mean, in 20 years, they're going to have a lot of rebuilding to do. I think guests will get tired of the content. I think at a certain point, guests will really be not just the fans, the people who understand theme park design, but I think guests will eventually start to expect more from the theme park the content of the lands themselves, not necessarily in thrill, but in, you know, having something as simple as a park for recreation, something themed to something in the real world, or something completely original and imagined. I think that's what guests will be tired of. In terms of immersion, again, I think no, because theme parks by nature are an immersive art form.
Mm.
So if that makes sense.
Okay. What about you, Alex?
I think, yes. I think people will eventually get tired of theme parks, because people are only interested in theme parks because they provide you something that you can't have in reality. It gives you the simulation of having what you can't have, like going to Pandora. But what happens in the future when they develop technologies that, you know, like you've seen the show Black Mirror, where everyone always has some kind of implant in their head that can make them think that they're somewhere else, or they're in a video game, or they're doing something else. That's the future. And I think that as soon as that technology comes out, and that people's brains can be fooled to thinking they're in another world and interacting with that world and being able to see, touch, and smell things that aren't there because of the implant, I think, and granted, that is science fiction now, and people laugh, but once cell phones were science fiction. So, you know, so I think that that's the future. And I think once that happens, the theme park industry will be done. That being said, even if that
I have to take notes.
Even if yes, you have work.
I have so
ahead
many
of you,
responses.
No,
I have.
Oh, okay.
I
I
have
thought
so
you
many.
were going to invent it.
I have to
but-
keep track of my thoughts.
So even if that doesn't happen, I think that immersiveness is something Disney's been striving for since they created Disneyland, right? Well, there is a limit to immersiveness. How much more immersive can you get than the five senses, you know, and fooling the five senses to believe they're real? So once you achieve that, immersiveness has its limit. And that being said, do I think people will get tired of immersiveness if that, once again, that virtual reality technology never comes to light? No, I don't think people will get tired of immersiveness in that sense then. But I do think that the desire, this ride, remember we talked about it a couple weeks ago at Disneyland. We said this ride from beginning to end is like the climax of a ride. There's no part of it which is like a lull or a drop in excitement. The whole thing is like from beginning to end the most, you know, exciting part of a movie. I think eventually people will get tired of that. Right now it's a trend to have everything right there. There's a reason why, you know, you watch Star Wars movies nowadays, the three newest ones are jam-packed full of excitement, unlike, let's say, Clone Wars, which has these long drawn-out scenes where there's no excitement. So that part is a trend, and I think eventually people will go, okay, everything is full of excitement. Let's find something that is calm and peaceful again. That'll happen. But I know my answer is very complicated, but that's because it's a complicated question. But I really do believe that the future of entertainment is in virtual reality. Jeremy, what is your response?
Yeah, cool. Let's go.
Your rebuttal.
So this is a complex answer to the complex answers that you gave. But I love conversations like this. Unfortunately, it's at the end when no one's watching.
That's true.
Guys, come back.
Save all this as a clip and post it as a separate video, because this is a great conversation to have. Question I proposed to you, Alex, is who's going to design these virtual worlds? My argument is theme park designers. John Hench famously said that Disneyland was the first virtual reality, and that's something that Imagineers might have been Walt and Imagineers might have been cracking at without even knowing it. So my argument is that the theme park industry will naturally transfer into these virtual worlds, virtual excursions, virtual theme parks. There's got to be designers. You got to have visual artists doing this. Who better than to design these virtual places that as long as they're realistic, looking, it actually feels like you're there. I think theme park design will converge into virtual reality design, whatever that field will be called. Also, on another note, it's also, I don't think this will take off until virtual reality actually makes you forget the world that you're actually in. Once that's the case, then we're dealing with a whole other real seeming world, and so theme parks will still exist within those virtual worlds that we create. That's a more philosophical point. However, I would like to point out that in something cast members watch about the philosophy behind the Disney theme show design. Says that theme parks are living proof, basically, that no matter how automated life gets, the example at the time was television, which when television came out, a lot of its critics were saying how it's going to cause more people to sit at home and not actively go out and do things. And in this particular film, they were saying how the Disney theme show is living proof that getting up and doing the real thing will always be a human necessity. I think if we do see a day in the future, in the far future, that where virtual reality is a mainstream thing, it is high quality enough to feel, see, sound, taste like reality, that even more so than virtual reality being a novelty, will people be hungry and will think, will contemplate deeper about the nature of reality and wanting to experience reality. So now we've kind of arrived at a larger philosophical destination in this conversation. That's what I believe. I don't think theme parks are going anywhere, whether they exist in the real world or the virtual world.
Okay, well, the question was, I assume, about the physical theme park. I do believe, as much as I really want to talk more about that virtual world and all that, I can't. But I'm going to go back to Matt's original question and elaborate that I believe that the physical theme park will eventually disappear. I was having a conversation with a friend the other day at Disneyland, and I casually mentioned, oh yeah, one day when Disneyland closes, and he stopped me for a second. He goes, wait, you think Disneyland's going to close someday? I go, yes, it's inevitable.
If it's poorly managed. Yeah.
No, not even, no, that won't happen. What will close Disneyland is the outside world, the technology, the innovations. The things that Disneyland doesn't have will be its Achilles heel. It eventually has to close. It doesn't matter what you think. Everything has a beginning and an end. Think about that. Everything. Even if it's a nuclear bomb. Not that I'm looking up because of that. I thought something was... I thought I saw a spider. But even if it's a... oh boy. Even if it's a nuclear bomb, something is going to close Disneyland eventually. It's just inevitable. It's like my good pal Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park says. The chaos theory assumes that there is a beginning and an end to something. And once you assume that, the end is inevitable. The small flaws in something will become larger, to paraphrase the last part. But yes, Disneyland will eventually close for any reason. It has to. That's life.
All right. So Disneyland is important culturally and historically. It is my opinion that in 100 years, when maybe the theme park as we know it today does not exist, the Disneyland, as Disneyland the way we know it, do you not think that people will come from all over the world to stand and look and marvel at it, and maybe walk through its remaining ruins at the visit the Colosseum and other important cultural architectural destinations?
No, because you see, Disneyland isn't made of stone. It's made of wood and steel, two things which degrade very quickly.
Do you not think that there would be some kind of organization created for the preservation of something as culturally important as a Disneyland?
Oh, yeah. And its lifespan might be 100 years. So 100 years after that, that'll be done.
Really? What about have you seen the Parthenon? Obviously things start decaying, but those have become, even in New York City, we have buildings that can't be demolished because they've been mandated that they can't be because they are culturally significant.
Let me give you an example. The Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco, very famous building, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
People love it. That's not the original building. The original building was destroyed in the 1950s because of age. It just got damaged so badly they had to demolish it and rebuild it. So,
sure.
I mean, everything has a lifespan. It's not up to
me. I
me.
agree with this. I agree with this on a philosophical level. I mean, it's hard for us to comprehend two things. One, that the civilization you currently live in may fall, and that the world may end. So I agree with you in the larger philosophical sense, but I think the theme park as an art form maybe will, just like the theater has gone through periods where the theater has not existed because it hasn't been able to, because of different reigns of empires and stuff like that. But certain art forms always come back. So if, let's say, the modern world as we know it goes through a similar period as the fall of Rome, where the whole landscape of civilization is completely obliterated and is rebuilt from the bottom up, I certainly think something like the theme park will come back around again.
Okay, yes,
even
again,
without
the
knowledge of
Disneyland wouldn't exist anymore. So yes, I agree. Life repeats itself, and we'll probably eventually build another Disneyland, 10,000 years into the future. But Disneyland, as we know it, will eventually close, and I estimate it will happen within 300 years.
I think, I think 300 years is even generous. I think it could happen sooner. Than that.
Oh yeah. I think in 50 years, actually, it would probably be more likely. But yes, if I say 50 years, people, Alex, and I go, ocean levels rise.
In my opinion, where theme park the principles of theme park design and function culturally and functions culturally, where Walt left off, and maybe the first generation Imagineers left off with it, is my point of interest. And there's a part of me that's like, where the theme park industry is today, I don't really care about at all. Because theme parks aren't doing what I feel that they were not destined to become, but where it was headed toward as an art form. But that's getting off on a different conversation. So I'm kind of like, to me, Disneyland is already, there's people who want to preserve the remnants of it that are examples of where the art form of theme park design was headed. But I agree with you, Alex. At a certain point, I already starting to feel this way about the Walt Disney Company in general. That I've already said many times on the show, it doesn't actually exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, and the Walt Disney Company could go it collapses on itself.
Well, so. The way that modern capitalism works is you basically merger and acquisition yourself out of existence. So I have no reason to believe. Actually, I do have reason to believe that. I don't doubt that if the deal was right, some other major company would buy Disney, and then it really wouldn't exist anymore.
Well, Matt, I really have to pee. So could we end this?
Okay.
It's been 3 hours.
Well, I got what I hoped for, you guys, with that question. So
Unfortunately, nobody's watching anymore. So, but it was a great conversation that I loved.
Two most philosophical people you know. Such a complicated question, and here we are.
Well, thank you guys for providing that lovely conversation. People will. 3 hours isn't too long. They'll stay tuned.
It's too long.
I gotta pee too. Oh my gosh, I'm so hungry.
I could have watched The Irishman the whole time.
I have to return like 5 phone calls that I had to reject because of this horrible show I'm forced to do.
All right. Well, anyways, thank you everybody for watching this episode of Matterhorn Mondays. I hope this made up for the shortness of the previous episode. I'm sure it did. I'm sure you guys love this episode. So thank you to Mr. Alex and Jeremy for joining me on this roller coaster of an episode.
Always a pleasure.
And yeah, I have to pee. I have to feed my cat. I'm hungry. I haven't eaten dinner yet. So let's go ahead and go do those things, you guys.
Me too.
Yeah, so thank you to everybody for coming out. As always, links to everything will be in the description. You guys know the drill. And as always... Oh, wait, there is one thing I forgot. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, my God.
What are you
just
doing?
Kidding. Have a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.